Hello everyone, Xeno What If here. Bring in Season 2 Part 10 of What If the Transformers Were in My Hero Academia. Link in the description of the fanfiction of this What If. Listen here YouTube. I do not own anything and this is not a scam. Chapter 19, Dating Dangerously. The Skyboom Shield. A relic that appeared to be as new as the day it was forged. It was a very tall shield that had multiple points and edges sticking out of it to give it a very dynamic appearance, making it almost seem streamlined in a way. The gold, silver and black details definitely helped in that regard as well, making it shine so much that one could see themselves in its reflection. Those and many more were the reasons why the 1A students were all staring at the relic, their sights transfixed on the massive weapon as it was propped up against the base's wall. Wow, so you're telling me that this thing is indestructible? Ochako asked as she reached out and touched the shield. All this time buried underground and it doesn't even have a scratch on it. Yeah, believe it or not, this thing was supposedly forged several millennia ago. Izuku emphasized. Forged by one of the original 13 primes. And even after so long, it's almost like it hasn't seen any use. Tenya put a hand to his chin, regarding the object with splendor. A shield that cannot be cracked and is capable of generating an energy field. Simply fascinating. May, on the other hand, beamed brightly with excitement at the weapon. Amazing is what it is. You have no idea how much of an itch I'm getting to study this thing right now. She began dashing back and forth to either side of the shield, inspecting it closely. You don't think there's any way I can disassemble it, do you? I mean, there has to be some mechanism inside of it that deploys the energy field and recognizes when a prime is holding it, right? The group all chuckled lightly at May's enthusiasm, knowing that the mad inventor could gush about the shield for hours. Momo glanced over to Kyoka curiously. That's right, only the hand of a prime can activate it, apparently. That's what Optimus said. The Perplet confirmed. Hey, apparently Starscream tried to activate it himself. Wish I could have seen his face when that failed on him. But then, her smile suddenly disappeared as she hugged her arm close. Just wish that one of us didn't have to get hurt in our mission. Hey, just remember, Jiro piped up, things could have been a whole lot worse if everything went belly up on us. Yeah, I mean, not only could Burns have died, but you guys might have, too. Denki emphasized with a grin. So in reality, Burns getting out alive with only a couple broken bones is the best scenario you could have asked for. And then Denki quickly found himself on the receiving end of several glares and unamused faces. I probably could have worded that better, but you get my point. HMPH, sure. Kyoka rolled her eyes. Doesn't help me feel better, anyway. Mina came over and put an arm around the punk rocker with a supportive smile. Hey, look on the bright side, Kyoka. They said that Burns will be making a full recovery with about a week's rest. She jerked her thumb over to the Skyboom shield. Plus, we ended up with the big win today, so things are gonna be fine, right? Slowly but surely, Kyoka smiled back to her friend and nodded. Yeah, you're right, Mina. Though I can't help but wonder, what exactly were those 3 life signals that Red Alert picked up? Wouldn't we all like to know that? Everyone perked their heads up and were surprised at the sight of RC coming into the room. She appeared to be fairly repaired, though her paint was still scratched up a little. Hey there, kids, how are we all doing? RC. Momo pressed her hands together and smiled up to her friend. You're back on your feet already. The intelligence officer chuckled nervously as she slowly came into the room, keeping her hand on the wall. Hee, well, just barely. B and I still gotta see Sunny about getting our paint back up to snuff, but we figured it'd be best to get Prime and the others all sealed up first before they leak energon everywhere. She craned her head around and waved to the yellow bot behind her, who also hobbled in. Isn't that right, B? Bumblebee flopped onto the floor after coming in, resting his head against the wall. ZKRT, man, why do we have to keep getting torn up like this? Stepping up next to his leg, Izuku put a supportive hand onto his friend. Yeah, I feel you there, B. First the scraplets, now this. It's been a rough week, that's for sure. That's an understatement. Tenya agreed before raising a brow up to RC. So, have Agents Fowler and Fairborn taken Agent Burns back to their base yet? Actually, that's part of the reason why I came in. They're gonna be headed out soon, so I thought I'd come in and tell you. RC trailed off and her optics focused onto Kyoka, who knew exactly what was coming next. In case, well, if any of you wanted to give Burns some words of encouragement. Kyoka sighed and nodded slowly. Yep, I'm coming. Time to do what I gotta do. Don't worry, Kyoka. Izuku assured as he and the others all gave her supportive smiles. We'll be right there with you, so don't feel discouraged. Deku's right. Ochako gave a thumbs up. Things between you guys will be great, I just know it. The Perplet had to admit, she wasn't expecting this level of support from her classmates, or rather, her friends. She bowed her head to them in appreciation as she took a big breath. Thanks guys. Really, I appreciate it. Come on, let's go. With that, the 81A students and May all went out into the main control room with RC and Bumblebee, and the first sight they were met with was Prime, Jazz and Bulkhead all having the holes in them being patched up. Red Alert, Strongarm, and surprisingly enough, Springer of all bots were working on them respectively, the latter still riddled with holes himself. The teens were taken by surprise by that, without question. Springer. Denki piped up. Oh, hey kids. Springer waved as he briefly paused working on Bulkhead's armor plating. We were wondering when you'd come around. Bulkhead grinned as well, gesturing to some sealed parts where a few of the bullet holes had once been. Hey, Mina, check these out. I bet a few of these are gonna leave some mesh scars. The Pinkett immediately brightened up at that. Whoa, sweet. Nice one, Bulk. Mina shifted her eyes up to Springer with intrigue. But I didn't know that you were a medic, Springer. And working on Bulk while you're still full of holes. That's hardcore. Springer chuckled a bit and brushed off his chest plate. I'm no medic, Mina, trust me. Though I was a pretty handy engineer when it came down to some tight situations. He continued working on Bulkhead's holes, welding them shut one by one. Sometimes, though, during war, some techniques come in handy for situations you'd never expect to use them. So when it comes to battlefield wounds, let's just say that I've had to weld a few shut in my time. Not many pretty sights, I can tell ya that right now. Whoa, now that is hardcore. Eijiro emphasized before turning to Prime. So, Optimus, we heard that Sector 7 were about to leave. Indeed, Eijiro, they're right over there. Optimus extended his finger toward the front entrance, where the three government agents were standing. Well, where Fowler and Fairborn were standing. Those two were supporting Burns by their shoulders, his arms wrapped around both their necks. His broken limbs had been mostly healed, but they were still sensitive and he'd need to stay off of them for a while. Prime directed his sights down to Kyoka, and she gave him a nod. Alright, here it goes. Kyoka started forward, the rest of her friends bringing up the rear before the agents saw them. Hey there guys. Oh, hey. Burns smiled genuinely. If it isn't the troublemaker. He saw Kyoka flinch and he couldn't help but chuckle a bit. Hey, kid, relax. Remember, I'm not angry with ya or anything. In fact, I'm happy to see you guys came to see us off. Izuku tilted his head. So, how long will you be held up, Agent Burns? If all goes well, he should be back in action by the end of tomorrow. Marissa emphasized. I do better with smaller and younger bones, so ones with a bit of age on them take a little longer. Burns narrowed his eyes at her. Hey, are you calling me old? Marissa wore a cheeky smirk at that. Sorry, but when it comes to the 20-year age gap, you got the short end of the stick, old man. A groan came from the Burns and everyone else burst out laughing, aside from Agent Fowler who shook his head in amusement. Hee, well, I will say that the mission went better than I had initially thought it would. The top agent admitted, setting his sights onto Izuku, Kyoka, Mina and Eijiro. I heard you kids did pretty well for yourselves out there, so congratulations. Maybe we'll consider putting you on more missions, and I'll be sure to put in a good word to Aizawa and Nezu. His smirk increased and gave the kids a knowing look. After this, we may need to acquire your hero costumes for these missions. Everyone was stunned by the implication. Wait, you're serious? Denki exclaimed. Well, sure. You are heroes in training, aren't ya? Time to prove it with some experience out in the field. But then, Fowler raised a finger to all of them. That said, don't get your hopes up too high, now. I'll have to get approval from Nezu, All Might and Aizawa for this. The first two may not be much of a problem, but your homeroom teacher will be a tougher nut to crack. Very true, Momo concurred. But we don't even have any provisional licenses yet, nor have we worked with any mentors. Are you sure something like this would even be allowed? Marissa shrugged to her. Well, you'd be both under the Autobots and government supervision, and you'd be conducting these missions in secret, so no public heroes other than the ones who already know about the Autobots would know about what you're doing. She gave them a small wink. And if any of them have issues with it, we'll show them what you're able to do and then tell them to mind their own business. But like I said, above all else, we'll need your teacher's approval for this. Fowler emphasized. They are responsible for you all in your hero training, after all. Tenya bowed his head to Fowler in understanding. Of course, Agent Fowler, that's very logical. But thank you for speaking on our behalf, all the same. Fowler nodded to the engine user before setting his focus over to May next. And of course, we'll need some proper support gear upgrades for you all, so if Miss Hatsume is willing and able. Say no more. May shouted with a salute. Just bring the outfits to me and I'll give them the proper babies they need. Everyone winced at the volume of her voice, but nonetheless, the students were happy to hear that May would help them in any upgrades they'd need. Hey, good, very good. Fowler chuckled before craning his head back up toward Springer. And hey, hot shot. Springer perked his head up and raised a metal brow down at him, the agent wearing a serious face. Be lucky that Burns here decided not to hold anything against you since him getting crushed wasn't your fault. If it were up to me, we'd be singing a different tune, but all the same, good job making sure none of the kids were hurt. Springer just smirked back and chuckled himself. Hey, didn't really have to do anything on my part, Fowler. The kids handled themselves pretty well out there. His attention went to Burns, nudging his chin at him. And hey, hot hands, heal up good, ya hear? Will do. Burns grinned back before sighing a little. It's gonna be a long 24 hours, I can say that much. Yeah, about that, Kyoka stepped forward, her hand reaching up to her neck apprehensively. Agent Burns, I wanted to say sorry for everything I've said to you these past couple of weeks. For the longest time, I thought you were just like any other government jerk, she offered a meek smile to him. But after what you did, I realized how wrong I was. Thanks again for saving my life back there. Burns smiled back down and reached his good arm out, placing it on her shoulder. Ah, don't worry about it, Miss Jiro. Trust me, I get it, when we're doing our job, we can come off as heartless cogs in a machine. But when it comes down to it, that's all it is, our job. We're people too, we feel empathy for others, but we have to hide it under a stern demeanor most of the time. He pulled his hand back and shook his head. Nothing's all that easy in this line of work. And I get it now. Kyoka nodded. Thank you for helping me see that. So, does this finally mean we're off the hook with you? Fowler asked hopefully. Yeah, Kyoka affirmed before smirking to Fowler. You, on the other hand, still might have a way to go. Fowler rolled his eyes as a chorus of laughter permeated through the whole place again. I should have figured, he trailed off as his sights went up to Optimus. Prime, I'll contact you once we get to base. Optimus rose to his feet, his wounds having been fully welded back up. Indeed, Agent Fowler. I will bridge there as soon as you do and I will bring the Skyboom shield, as we discussed. Good, we'll see you then. After a round of farewells between everyone, Izuku set his eyes up to Optimus curiously. Hey, Optimus, what did you mean by you bringing the Skyboom shield to Sector 7's base? Are you gonna store it there or something? Indeed, Izuku. The Skyboom shield is far too important to keep here, where it can be easily taken. Optimus explained. And while it would be a useful tool in battle, there is even more of a risk of the Decepticons taking it there as well. They may not be able to use its full power, but a relic such as that is too important to lose. Better to keep any advantages we have than risk 'em being taken away, ya know what I'm sayin'. Jazz added. Mina waved up to them affirmably. Oh yeah, totally. Still, would be a shame if we just hauled it off to Sector 7 without showing the rest of these guys how it worked. She jabbed her thumb toward Momo and the others, all while eyeing Optimus knowingly. Maybe just a small demonstration. Optimus saw the expectant and pleading gazes of the children, cracking a small smile beneath his faceplate. Haha, alright, very well, he obliged. A brief showcase of the shield's power wouldn't hurt, I suppose. A collective cheer came from the students, only for them to die down in confusion as Prime raised his hand toward the other room. He saw their perplexed expressions and raised a finger. Wait for it, shoom. Clang. Nearly as fast as a speeding bullet, the skyboom shield came flying from out of the doorway and into Prime's hand, stunning the students as he raised it up to them. And there you are. Slack-jawed and wide-eyed, the group of 9 teenagers blinked in utter disbelief. I don't, what? May screamed as she started writing furiously in her notes. This defies all laws of physics. Optimus, how did you do that? Tenya exclaimed. When I placed my hand upon the shield for the first time and it recognized me as a prime, some more of its features were unlocked to me aside from the energy field. Optimus elaborated as he raised said field, the golden hexagonal patterned barrier appearing before him. Thanks to this new link, I am able to summon the shield from several feet away, so long as it's within range. Eijiro pumped his fists with a wide smile. That is so freaking cool. You could take down a whole bunch of cons if they were in the way when you do that. Prime chortled at that as he lowered the field. Yes, fair point, Eijiro. But as stated before, this relic is far too important to fall into enemy hands, as enjoyable as it would be to wield. His optics shifted down, seeing his reflection within the shield's pristine finish. But who knows? Perhaps a time will come when the Skyboom shield may see some use. I hope so, that shield is badass. Denki agreed, only for a small alarm in his pocket to suddenly go off. Several others also heard alarms of their own, and they could only come to one conclusion. Oh crap, is that? It is. Momo confirmed gravely as she eyed her own phone. It's almost curfew. Damn, time flies by. Kyoka noted, shifting her eyes back over to RC and Bumblebee. Hey, I know you guys are still scratched up, but is there any chance you'd still be able to get us home? RC quickly gave her a reassuring wave. Oh, PSH, of course. You ready, B? Bumblebee buzzed in approval and the two transformed, their vehicle modes just as scratched up as their robot modes. We may not be pretty, but we'll get you guys home lickety-split. Bulkhead, with his wounds all sealed up, stood from his seat and came over as well. Ah, I'll come with, too. Feeling a lot better now, really. WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. Now in his Hummer mode, the green Autobot opened his doors, inviting his usual tag-alongs in. Eijiro, Denki, Mina, load on up. With that, everyone went to their respective rides, with Optimus extending a hand to them. Safe travels, everyone. And remember, there are only 2 days left to go before the sports festival, so let's make those days count. He received a collective, right. Before all of the students got in their rides, the 3 Autobots rolling out into the night. Right at that moment, however, the main console started beeping, causing Red Alert to move right over to it. Optimus, incoming transmission from UA. This caught Prime's attention immediately. Put it on screen. He had expected All Might to appear on the large monitor when Red Alert answered, but instead, he was met with the beady, yet friendly eyes of a certain mammalian principal. Greetings, Optimus Prime. Nezu smiled and raised his paw to the Autobot leader. How has your evening been? Nezu, sir, this is quite the unexpected call. Optimus replied. Our evening is going well. To what do we owe the pleasure? Well, over the past few days, I was thinking of a potential idea, one that involves the UA faculty and expanding this circle of trust that we have. Nezu began, catching Optimus' full attention. Now, I wanted to run this by you first, since I don't know how comfortable you would be with it. If you aren't, that's completely understandable, of course. But I figured that having more people in the know about you would be beneficial, to both the students' safety and your benefit. Optimus had to admit, he was intrigued by the proposal. And with Unicronus now confirmed to be on Earth, some more allies wouldn't hurt. Prime pulled up a chair and leaned forward, ready to hear Nezu out. You have my attention, Nezu, sir. Please, go on. The next day was Saturday, and overall, things were, actually kind of hectic for the students of Class 1A. 2 days to go until the sports festival, and they had to deal with midterms on top of their usual assignments. Needless to say, the testing ran them all rampant, but thankfully, they got a bit of reprieve when lunchtime came around. The 81A students who were in the know about the Autobots were on their way to their usual table, when they all paused at the sight of who was already standing there. What? Mina asked. At the table was none other than Keita Kiryu, along with Rikido Sato, Hanta Shiro, Fumikage Tokiyami, Tsuyu Asui, and Toru Hagakuri, all of them facing the group with expectant stares. Needless to say, the moment was a bit awkward, especially with plenty of people still going around the cafeteria. After glancing back and forth in confusion, Kyoka decided to lead things off. Hey guys. Keita led as well, giving the perplet a curt nod. How's it going? Oh, not too bad. Kinda confused why all of you are gathered here, but otherwise. Toru sheepishly rubbed the back of her neck, at least that's what they assumed she was doing. Kind of hard to read someone's body language when all you can see is their clothes. Yeah, well, here's the thing, we were wondering. Just where have you guys been going after school? Sue. I was getting to that. The frog girl placed a hand on Toru's shoulder and apologized. Sorry, Toru, but you were kinda beating around the bush. I figured it'd be best to be straightforward. With a small sigh from the invisible girl, Sue went back to the others. But I'm not gonna lie, we came here because we were curious about what you guys have been doing every day after classes are done. You've all been coming and going the same way for the past couple of weeks. Hanta pointed out. Being dropped off and picked up by random cars and then driving off to who knows where. It's kinda weird. But then Rikido waved his hand. Well, they're not random, Shiro. I recognize the Beetle as Brian's car. Ya know, All Might's intern. Which brings up another good question. Fumikage interjected, his seemingly ever-present glare boring into all of them. Just what kind of connection do you have with Brian? It all seems rather strange to me for all of you to suddenly go with him to places unknown. Yeah, and hanging out with someone interning with All Might sounds like a pretty big deal, Keita went on while raising her brow at her friends. You guys aren't getting some sorta extra tutelage from All Might himself, are ya? There was a long, tense silence after that. The group were completely speechless as their classmates questioned them, and while there was no hostility behind the inquiries, they could all tell they were dying to know. After a little while, however, Tenya gave a brief laugh, surprising even his friends. Is that what this is about? Everyone, I can assure you that there's nothing of the sort going on, believe me. Keita placed her hands on her hips and tilted her head. Okay, class rep, so if that's not what's going on, then what is? I think I can answer that. Izuku piped up, bringing everyone's attention onto him. Usually he didn't do so well with so many eyes on him, but he felt like he owed everyone this explanation, especially since it involved keeping their cover. Why, you see, Brian is actually the son of a family friend who's in the military. He's spent the last year here in Japan and over time, we've become really good friends. But Brian has a lot of friends of his own who are also in the military. Kyoka continued, backing Izuku up to help ease the process for him. And after talking with them a bit, they said they'd be happy to help us out with training for the sports festival. Their fellow students were surprised by the answer. Whoa, seriously? Hanta said with his triangular grin. That's awesome. Rikido pumped his fists at what he heard. No kiddin'. Getting to train with actual military guys. That sounds sweet. Think we could come along sometime? Toru asked excitedly. The other group eyed one another warily at that question, knowing that they'd have to deliver a disappointing answer. Sorry guys. Eijiro apologized. But their commander has made it clear that they don't have time to train with a whole class full of us, especially with the limited time they have per day. We're lucky enough to get training time for a few hours after school as is. Denki added with a shrug. If any more of us were added, their people would be stretched thin. The other students all became visibly crestfallen at that. Well, I guess that makes sense. Hanta relented. Guess there goes that. However, Keita was still curious about something. Okay, but what about that girl from the support course we see with you every day? Hatsume, I think her name is. Yes, she seems like quite the odd addition to your group. Fumikage noted as he narrowed slightly in suspicion. What connection does she have to you all, exactly? Oh, right, Hatsume, Momo started. Well, in truth, her uncle actually has some connections with this military group as well. He helps repair their vehicles and whatnot. And since he's usually at their base for work, she usually comes along with us after school. She offered her classmates a kind smile. I think you all would actually like her. Hatsume is a bit of an oddball, but she's good people. Keita pursed her lips at that. It all seemed like a pretty tight explanation of things, but still, she couldn't help but feel that there were still some things that didn't add up. A bit too many conveniences, maybe. Well, whatever it was, she didn't want to press the issue too much and start an unneeded confrontation, especially with her friends. Her smile slowly returned and she offered a shrug of her own. Ah, well, if you say so. But hey, let's hope your fancy military training is enough to get you far in the sports fest. She leaned in closer with a determined gaze. Because I don't plan on losing. Oh, you're not the only one. Ochako gave her own determined smile and raised a challenging fist. I'm gonna make it all the way to the top, you'll see. I'm gonna. Do your best, right, we've heard it before. Keita winked. And hey, no matter how we train, let's keep that as our goal for this festival, But just then, an unwelcomed voice entered the conversation. MHA. Speak for yourself, lizard lips. Almost everyone cringed at the sound of Katsuki Bakugo's boisterous roar, the explosive blonde walking past them with his head craned back and his lips up in a sneer. He glanced over to them at first before turning his head, sending them a resolute glare. Going in with that kinda attitude is what separates the losers from the winners. If you wanna win the whole thing, you're gonna actually want it. Grr, winning isn't everything, Baku breath. Keita retaliated. Not in this case, scale belly. Katsuki retorted with a surprising amount of gravity. Think about it, we're gonna have the whole world watching us and almost every pro in Japan who are scouting for internships. This sports festival is gonna make or break us, and I don't plan on being broken. I'm gonna win the whole damn thing, you'll see. He seemed to focus on Izuku briefly as he finished his statement, and if anyone decides to get in my way, you can be sure I'll break them. With that, Katsuki walked away, not even giving anyone the chance to retort against him. Ah, that guy. Kyoka groaned. That had to be the most manliest thing I've ever heard. Eijiro exclaimed as his own sharp-toothed grin appeared, pumping a fist up in the air. Now I'm feelin' the itch to win. However, many of the others all eyed him with either surprise or disappointment. Kirishima, you can't be serious. Keita argued. You see that as manly. Wanting to break people to get to the top. Instantly, Eijiro's recoiled at the accusation and waved his hand. Oh okay, maybe not that part. But you gotta admit, the thought of winning the tournament isn't a bad one. Kirishima's right, and so is Kachin. Izuku said, the greenette staring after Bakugo while the others were stunned by him of all people being in agreement with him. We have to keep in mind that this is more than just about showing off what we've got to the world, but being able to impress the pro heroes as well. If we wanna do that, we're gonna have to make it to the top. He smiled to the others as he rubbed the back of his neck sheepishly. Oh of course, I don't plan on breaking anyone either, but hey, I'm pretty sure Kachin was just exaggerating anyway. Well, we can only hope so. Keita rolled her eyes as she and her group started to move away from the table. Anyways, sorry to interrupt your lunch, guys. We'll see you back in class, K. Yeah, of course. Mina waved. We'll see you then. The group of 8 sat down to enjoy their meal, all while sighing in relief. Man, that was a close one. Kaminari rested his hand against his head. Yeah, I didn't think everyone would get this suspicious about the whole thing. Glad they bought our cover story. Kyoka crossed her arms, thinking back to how Keita had paused back there. Just by her facial expressions alone, the perplet could tell that the Soro parts user still had her suspicions, and that did concern her a little bit. Well, I just hope that it can stay that way. If anyone else in this school catches on to you know what, it could be all over. On that, we can agree. Tenya nodded. Hopefully things will never come to that. There was a bit of silence before the class rep decided a change of topic was necessary. So, how about these midterms? Think you're all doing well. A collective murmur came from the table as everyone started eating, the teens wanting to discuss anything but the tests. A few hours later, the school day, and more importantly, the testing, was finally over, and the 8 teens were ready to head out to get to the more enjoyable part of their day. Training with the Autobots. As always, they met up with May outside of the school entrance and then trudged out straight for the parking lot, where RC, Bulkhead and Bumblebee were already waiting in their vehicle modes. Their holoforms stood together, with Sadie waving to the teens first. "Hey there, guys. How was school?" The pink-haired girl was taken aback by how exhausted most of them appeared, their bodies slumped forward with their arms hanging down at their sides. "Whoa, what happened to you?" "Ah, ya know, we just went through hell," Kyoka replied. "Midterm testing on a Saturday is freaking torture." Sounds lovely," Sadie said sarcastically. Behind everyone else, Momo, Izuku, Tenya and Mei all seemed relatively fine for the most part, with the pink kid crossing her arms and shaking her head. "I dunno what you guys seem so down on. My tests were easy peasy." "Well yeah, but you guys are smart," Denki emphasized, with everyone else shooting small glares at the four. "Yeah, plus we had very little time to prepare with everything else that's been happening this week," Eijiro added. Sadie rubbed the back of her neck and winced a little. "Ooh, yeah, good point. Maybe we should have put a bit more focus on schoolwork to balance out training for the sports festival." Tenya raised a hand to speak. "Well, what's done is done. Though I will say that something else of note did happen today. We got questioned by our fellow students about our goings on after school these past couple of weeks." This caught the three Autobots' attention immediately. Plenty of them were curious as to why we've been picked up and dropped off by you three every day. May's eyebrows snapped up in surprise. "Whoa, really? Did you give him our cover story?" "Oh, don't worry, we did," Eijiro reassured. "Though we did have to give him some bad news when they asked if they could train with you, military guys." "Yeah, well, it is what it is, I suppose," Buck said, seeing how unsure the teens were. He sighed and sent a sympathetic gaze their way. "Guys, listen, I know that you're uncomfortable with lying like this, but remember, it's for the good of this whole planet that you keep our secret." The teens all nodded to him. "Yeah, we know, still kind of feels bad to have to lie to their faces, though," Eijiro said, placing his hands behind his head. "But whatever, I'm just glad that all of that testing is done." "I know, right?" Mina threw her head back and whined, it sucked. "Well, at least we'll have the day off tomorrow." Denki shrugged. "Then after the sports festival, we get 2 days off while the second and third years do their events." Sadie and Buck nodded at that. "Hey, now there's something to look forward to, right? We'll take those days to celebrate how you guys did." The teens eyed each other warily before Eijiro pointed out, but you don't know how we're going to do at the sports festival yet." "Maybe not, but either way, we're still gonna celebrate," Buck asserted. "Because honestly, after putting you through our intense training regimen, you kids deserve a party, no matter what place you get." "Aw, thanks Bulk," Ochako beamed happily. "That's so nice." Momo placed her hands together and bowed her head to them. "Yes, it truly is. It's very sweet that you're willing to celebrate our accomplishments no matter the outcome." "ZRTK, celebrate good times, come on." Bumblebee suddenly blasted through his radio as his holoform started dancing to the groovy beat of Kool and the Gang. The group all laughed together as Brian continued to disco dance as best he could, until the blonde boy caught sight of the top of someone's head just beyond the short brick wall around the parking lot, and this person had a familiar head of luscious black hair. The sound of a record scratch blared through the radio before he jumped back into his vehicle mode, through the window. ZRKT, abort. Abort. ZRTK, retreat. Needless to say, everyone was taken aback. "Whoa, B, what's gotten into you?" Izuku asked. In response, Bumblebee played this. "Whoa oh, here she comes. Watch out boy, she'll chew you up. Whoa oh, here she comes. She's a man-eater. Oh no." Kyoka immediately understood, her head whipping toward the parking lot gate. "She's here, everyone, get in and let's scram. Well, look who we have here." Some felt a chill run down their spine at the voice they heard, others couldn't help but feel slightly stimulated by its dulcet tone. And of course, there were some that had both feelings at the same time. Everyone craned their heads around in time to see none other than Midnight come strutting their way, the woman still in her BDSM hero costume. She put a visible sway in her hips as she came toward the group, and while she seemed to be eyeing all of them, a few could tell that she was zeroed in on Brian in particular. Seems like some of my favorite students are once again off to train military style, Nearly everyone swallowed hard at that, though Denki couldn't help but feel somewhat elated at that compliment. Did you hear that? He whispered. She called us some of her favorite students. Kyoka grimaced and rolled her eyes. Kaminari, come back to reality and stop getting your hopes up. Whatever you're thinking, it ain't gonna happen. She put on a smile for her teacher as she approached. Hey, Miss Midnight. What's up? Oh, nothing much. I just came because I wanted to compliment you again on your history assignments from this past Monday. Midnight shifted her eyes over to Mina and raised a brow. Admittedly, I could tell that some were a bit more slapdash than others. The pink girl laughed nervously before Midnight followed it up with praise again. But overall, you did a fantastic job. I anticipate seeing your midterm exams once they get back. She bit her lip in anticipation as her sights went over to the blonde of her desires, who was desperately trying to hide under his car door. Brian, you're so cute when you're bashful like this. I think the word you're looking for is terrified. RC thought to herself before going over and putting a hand on B's shoulder. Hee, come on Bree, there's really nothing to be nervous about, ya know. She raised a skeptical brow to Midnight, silently questioning if she was right. Miss Sadie, was it? Midnight kept a professional tone about her as she spoke to the shorter woman. I appreciate you showing support for your friend, but I actually do have something important to say to him. This took RC and many others by surprise, Brian himself staring at the R-rated heroine teacher incredulously as she lowered herself down to his eye level. Even more surprising to him, though, was that there was a very serious air about her. Brian, I know that these past couple of weeks must have been strange for you. I know that I can be quite the flirt, but I want to assure you that I mean no harm, and if you've ever felt uncomfortable, I'm sorry. And just like that, everyone's minds were left utterly confused. Wait, is Miss Midnight apologizing for being too flirty with someone? Eijiro whispered. Who is this woman and what has she done with our teacher? Kyoka added. I heard that. Midnight said aloud, making the punk rocker cover her mouth. The woman craned her head around to the teenagers with a raised brow. I may be a flirt, but I'm also a responsible adult who can recognize when things have gone too far. Her concentration went back to Brian, her expression unchanging. It's like a dominatrix knowing how submissive her partner is willing to be and when a line has been crossed. An awkward silence passed over the group, the analogy implanting in their heads like a confused tumor. That's a weird comparison, they all thought. Midnight waved it off and went back to her point. But the long and short of it is, I do have a strong attraction to you, Brian. And I'm not afraid to admit that. She gave him a soft, genuine smile, which actually made him relax a bit. So that means I'm not afraid to ask this either, would you like to go on a little date with me tonight? If she turned around, Midnight would have seen the astonished faces everyone was wearing, but she kept going. If memory serves, I made an offer to show you around to a few fun places I know, so I would like to make do on that. So, what do you say, big boy? Wanna take a chance? Bumblebee was honestly a bit stunned. The woman who had been unrelentingly flirting with him for the past couple of weeks had not only said sorry for making him feel uncomfortable, but genuinely offered to take him on a small tour to what he could assume were some local places. It was a lot for him to process all at once, but at the same time, he felt like a great weight had been lifted off his shoulders. Maybe she's not as bad as I thought. The blonde glanced up to his compatriots, hoping to get some sort of advice. However, all they could offer were some perplexed looks and a few shrugs, they themselves unsure of what to make of the offer. However, when his eyes landed on Sadie, she offered him an empathetic gaze and a soft smile, giving him a nod. Say thank you, but let her down gently. RC thought to herself, hoping her message came across to the bug. After a few more moments of thinking, Bumblebee came up with his answer, ZRKT, okay. Ah, Excel, what? RC nearly transformed out of shock, but stopped herself. What? Bulkhead exclaimed. Say what? All of the students shouted simultaneously. ZRKT, thank you for, ZRKT, being a really nice person. Brian said through his radio while bowing his head to Midnight. ZRKT, I will go on, ZRTK, this date, and, ZRKT, I'm sure we'll have, ZRKT, a good time. Midnight gasped and clapped her hands together happily. "Ah, I was hoping you'd say that. Brian, I can promise you that you will not regret this." She reached up to run a hand through his hair before trailing a finger down his jawline. "I've still got a few things to take care of here, so meet back here at about 5:30, okay?" She wore a flirtatious grin as she leaned in closer to him. "I promise you'll be blown away and we'll have a very fun time." Brian saluted right back to her. "ZRKT, that's a big 10-4. Amazing." Midnight winked to him once more as she spun around on her heel to leave. "I'll see you later tonight, tall, blonde and handsome." She also winked to everyone else and raised an arm to them. "And students, I hope you're all excited for the sports festival on Monday. Take care and best of luck to all of you." And just like that, Midnight was off, though this time she had a little spring in her step. All the same, however, everyone was left utterly baffled by what they just saw. "The heck did we just witness?" May hollered. About an hour later, everyone was back at the Autobot base, and needless to say, you did what? Red Alert wasn't taking the news well. He was pacing back and forth in front of a sheepish Bumblebee, with RC and Bulkhead standing at just a few feet behind him as Red chewed him out. "You're telling me that you accepted to go on an outing with a human female?" He snapped his head up to the other two, making them flinch. "And you didn't stop him?" Well, what were we supposed to do?" Bulkhead asked. "Make ourselves look like utter jerks for no reason. Besides, it's just a date, Red. What could possibly go wrong?" "Oh, I dunno, everything," RC emphasized, her focus going down to be himself. "Bumblebee, you really should have thought things through here better. We're in the middle of a war with the Decepticons, who've proven to be able to show up at the most unexpected times. And yet you willingly accepted a date with a human female who you barely know." ZRKT, well, technically, ZRKT, we've known each other, ZRKT, for weeks. Bumblebee defended himself. ZRKT, and besides, ZRKT, she actually apologized, ZRKT, for making me feel, ZRKT, totally weird. He folded his arms and gave a shrug. ZRKT, I feel like I could at least, ZRKT, give her what she wants, ZRKT, if only for just, ZKRT, one night. ZRKT, besides, it sounds fun. Red Alert, however, wasn't satisfied with that answer. And what if it isn't just for one night, Or what if this night goes horribly wrong and the Decepticons attack from out of nowhere? He pointed to Bumblebee with a stern finger, the yellow bot growing increasingly upset. "I can go on and on about how this could go horribly wrong, yet all you're concerned about is having a good time." Bumblebee scowled and he balled a fist, batting Red's own hand away. ZRKT, don't you go pointing fingers at me, Buster. Without question, B's reaction took everyone aback, even the teens who were secretly peering in from the other room. ZRKT, all I want is to make, ZRKT, someone happy. ZRKT, if something goes wrong, ZRKT, I'll take responsibility for it, ZRKT, and call for backup. ZRKT, I'm not some kid anymore, ya know. Well, you're certainly acting like one. Red countered stoically, his lips in a slight sneer as he turned away from the group and waving them off. But what do I care? Go on ahead, risk the safety of yourself and this woman. Don't come to me when it all goes wrong. As Red Alert left, the trio and the students stared after him in stunned silence. That was probably the most upset they had seen him in quite some time, and for the students, that was the angriest they had seen him ever. The only one who wasn't left speechless was, of course, Bumblebee. ZRKT, yeah, well, ZRKT, get welded. He began storming toward his quarters, hoping to vent some frustrations while getting ready for his date. Bumblebee, the small bot paused and turned his head slightly toward RC, her face etched with worry. Please, let's just all calm down and think this whole thing through. I know that you want to make Midnight happy, but there are a ton of risks that could happen. She placed a hand on her chest. If anything, at least allow me to ghost you guys, just to make sure no Decepticons decide to show up. B let that thought simmer in his processor before relenting. ZRKT, fine, if it'll make you feel better, ZRTK, be my guest. He shook his head and went on to ask, ZRKT, just make sure you don't. ZRKT, be too noticeable. ZRKT, okay. ZRKT, I don't wanna. ZRKT, freak her out or anything. RC smiled and flashed him a thumbs up. Understood. You can count on me. ZRKT, great. ZRKT, now if you'll excuse me, ZKRT, I need to go find out. ZRKT, what to do on. ZRKT, a date. With that, Bumblebee left, and Bulkhead eyed RC curiously. You seem oddly okay with this all of a sudden. Trust me, I'm not. RC denied with a sigh. But, it's Bumblebee's choice. And as much as it frustrates me, I'm not about to deny him something he's so adamant on. So what, you're just gonna ghost him for the entire night? The two Autobots set their attention downward as Izuku, Kyoka and Momo came in, the others having left the awkward situation to go train. Kyoka crossed her arms and raised an eyebrow up at RC. You do know weird that is, right? Why yeah, Kyoka's right. Izuku agreed. Spying on dates is kinda not cool, you know. At that, RC scoffed and gave a short laugh. Ah, spying. Haha, guys, I can assure you that I do not intend on spying on their date. My job will be to watch out for Decepticons, that's all. But both Momo and Kyoka weren't convinced, sending knowing smirks up to the pink femme. RC, you're not fooling anyone. Momo asserted. We all saw how flustered you were when Bumblebee said yes to Midnight's offer. The raven-haired beauty leaned in and pointed a finger up to her. Admit it, you're jealous that Bumblebee's taking a pretty woman out on a date. RC's jaw dropped at the accusation. Ah, I have no clue what you're talking about. She turned her head up and spun away from Momo, placing her hands firmly on her hips. What reason would I have to be jealous? Bumblebee's my friend, and I respect him enough to go along with this decision, even if it is risky. Maybe, Kyoka shook her head, her smirk only increasing. But it sounds to me that there's some things you're burying beneath the surface. She saw RC glance back down to her in confusion, but Kyoka simply shrugged it off. But hey, what do I know? If you're really so supportive of B's choice, then who are we to judge? RC pursed her lips at that. There was something that Kyoka was trying to get at, but the intelligence officer wasn't exactly sure what that was yet. Thank you, she replied warily. That said, I could use some extra sets of eyes on this mission. Think you three would be interested? Izuku and the girls looked to one another, thinking over their options. Well, Optimus isn't here and B's going on his date, so I'm free for a little while. Izuku noted. Plus, Windblade's out on patrol today, so I'm free as well. Momo added. Kyoka placed her hands behind her head. And since Jazz is busy trying to decipher that message again, I'm pretty free, too. By the way, she shifted her attention up to Bulkhead inquisitively. Where is Optimus? We haven't seen him since we got here. Ah, something about an important meeting with Nezu, Aizawa and All Might. Bulkhead answered. I bet they're just discussing how our mission went yesterday. Another hour had passed and things were finally starting to wind down for the teachers at UA. Hi. If the kids thought they had it bad having to take their midterms, then they'd probably loathe having to actually grade them. This was Present Mike's thought as he and Snipe walked through the hallowed halls of the high school, both of them having finally finished grading all the students' tests. The part-time radio DJ slumped forward, his hand moving to his back in pain. Ah, God, that was hellish. Tellin' me, Mike. Snipe agreed, the gas-masked gunslinger stretching his arms up high to loosen himself up. I think I got more cramps in my shootin' hand than normal after all that. Just think, finals for this semester are gonna be even worse if what Nezu has planned is gonna actually happen. Mike pointed out. And on top of that, now we've got a last-minute meeting to go to. Both men groaned exasperatedly before a new sound greeted their ears. It sounded like heels clicking along the floor. The duo paused in the hall and turned their heads back, and were stunned by what they saw. What the hell? Snipe had to do a double take, rubbing the lenses on his mask to make sure he wasn't seeing things. Nemuri. What is all this? Before them stood none other than Nemuri Kayama, the R-rated heroine Midnight. Only she wasn't in her scantily clad hero costume as they had expected her to be. Rather, she was in a rather eye-catching shin-length midnight blue dress with a low cut for her cleavage and an exposed back. She also wore matching heels and her face had been done up in fresh makeup while her dark hair cascaded freely behind her. Her dazzling blue eyes glimmered with excitement as she greeted the two men. "Oh, hello boys. Lovely day out, isn't it?" Snipe was having trouble finding his tongue at the moment. I reiterate, what the hell?" Present Mike repeated, upping his volume for emphasis. "Ah, must you do that, Mike?" Nimari scolded as she rubbed her ear, raising her head up proudly. "If you must know, I've changed into this dress for my date in just a few short minutes." This took both men by surprise. "Whoa, a date, seriously?" "Yep, just made it a couple hours ago, actually." Snipe furrowed his brow and pointed at her. "Wait, so you actually brought that dress to school with ya prepared for a date, that ya didn't even have locked in?" "Well, of course." Midnight wore her usual sultry grin as her insides began bubbling with excitement. "After all, you can never be too prepared for last-minute dates. Besides, I've been working my charms on this boy for a long time, and the fact that he's finally agreed to a night on the town with me, oh, it just makes me feel giddy." Mike rolled his eyes behind his sunglasses. "Among other things, I'm sure." He placed his hands on his hips and asked, "So who is this boy, anyway?" "Anyone we might know." "Oh, it's all Mike's intern, Brian." Midnight answered. "You remember, the one he brought to observe the entrance exams." At that, both Snipe and Mike's eyes widened in disbelief. Kiddin'." Snipe shook his head. "Nimari, he's gotta be like, what, 10 to 12 years younger than you." "What can I say? I like the young, strapping ones." Nimari stuck her tongue out in anticipation. "Makes me feel a lot younger myself, honestly, as much as I hate to admit my age." Both men deadpanned at that. "Midnight, you still look like you're in your 20s. Mike muttered. "Not sure you need any more help feeling young." However, Midnight simply smiled at the blonde man. "Ah, thank you, Mike, I appreciate that." She strolled on past the duo and waved to them as she set out. "Anyway, I'll see you all on Monday. Have fun with your days off." Wait, didn't ya get the memo?" Snipe called back. "Nezu asked us to come to a last-minute meeting after Cloan." "Ah, just tell me what happened when Monday rolls around." Midnight brushed off. "I've already got my plans locked in, and besides, it can't be anything too important, can it?" She heard the men sigh behind her as she exited the front door, making her way down to the front entrance. It was exactly 5:29, and as if on cue, she saw a certain Volkswagen Beetle come pulling up to the curb. Brian got out and her eyes lit up at his ensemble, a black leather jacket with a yellow polo and blue jeans. Simple, but it just worked for him. She couldn't help but smirk at the face he made when he saw her in her dress, his eyes wide and lips parted just slightly. Oh yeah, he was stunned. HM, you like?" Brian swallowed nervously, something he never thought he would have to do before replying, "ZRKT, you look, ZRKT, fantastic." "Aw, you're so sweet." Midnight strode right up to Brian and stopped mere centimeters away from him, leaning in quite close. "And I must say, you're quite ravishing tonight as well. Though I sense a bit of a motif with your clothes." "ZRKT, I like, ZRKT, yellow." Midnight couldn't help but laugh, though she attempted to control herself by holding her hand close to her mouth. "Ahahaha. Oh, Brian, you are a hoot." She leaned in even further, wrapping an arm around his neck as she pressed her chest against his. "I can just tell that this is going to be an amazing night. Shall we?" "ZRKT, let's get rolling." The duo climbed into the Beetle and were off down the street within minutes, all while a certain pink sports car kept a watchful optic on them from a safe distance. Meanwhile, behind UA's main building, Present Mike and Snipe had made it out to this last-minute meeting, where the rest of the school's faculty had all gathered together. Among the more notable teachers were Cementos, 13, Vlad King, and Ectoplasm, though others such as Hound Dog, Power Loader, and even Lunch Rush and Recovery Girl were there as well. And then of course, there was All Might, Eraserhead and Nezu himself, the three of them standing near the front of the small crowd of teachers. "Alright, everyone, if I may have your attention, please." Nezu waved his paws, bringing their focus straight to him. "I would like to thank you all for coming on such short notice. I know that between preparations for the sports festival and today's midterms, things have been quite hectic. However, considering what we have to show you today, I believe that you will all be quite surprised, nonetheless. Before he could go on, however, Aizawa spoke up, noticing the lack of someone in particular. Wait, we're missing Midnight. Where is she? Yeah, about that, Present Mike started, getting everyone's attention. Snipe rubbed the back of his neck, knowing how Aizawa would probably react. She, had a prior engagement she had to make, so she asked us to fill her in on what this is all about on Monday. Big surprise. Aizawa groaned. Worry not, Aizawa. All Might assured. We can't control the lives of everyone, you know. I'm sure that Midnight will find out sooner or later, anyways. The symbol of peace placed his hand on his hips and faced the crowd once more. So, let's get this started, shall we? I'm sure you're all wondering why you're here. Well, to answer that, allow me to bring in a close personal friend of mine, one that some of you may even recognize. All Might waved his hand toward the entry gate, and pulled a rather large red and blue semi-truck, which pulled to a stop just a few feet away from where the teachers were gathered. At first, they all murmured amongst themselves in confusion, but the moment that the driver's side door opened and Agent Fowler stepped out, there were several surprised noises from them as well. Fowler straightened his tie and spoke up, addressing the crowd with a slight bow. Hello, teachers and heroes of UA. Hi. It's a pleasure to be here. Whoa, Agent Fowler. Power Loader asked. What's he doing here? Vlad King piped up, the white-haired blood hero furrowing his brow. There's not some sort of national emergency, is there? No, there isn't, Mr. King. At least not yet. Fowler answered, placing his hands behind his back, all while the sound of copter blades began to be heard overhead. However, there is something important related to not just national security, but world security that Principal Nezu thinks you should all be aware of. You see, a few weeks ago, we experienced an event, one that was pretty unexpected. I'm assuming you all remember the meteor incident, right? Cementos was the next to speak. Well, how could we not? It was the day after the UA incident, after all. Exactly, Fowler craned his head up, leading everyone to do the same. Descending down toward them was a green helicopter, one with a very strange design to it. The copter just casually landed on the ground, and to everyone's astonishment, there was no one inside. But to put it simply, there's much more to it than that. You see, those weren't meteors that came crashing down into Musutafu that night. They were something else. I suggest you all brace yourselves for what you're about to see. Much to everyone's astonishment, the truck began to move on its own as well, eliciting gasps and yells from the crowd. And then, WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. Both the truck and the helicopter started to shift and change shape, their parts converting into what appeared to be limbs and other body parts that took on robotic, humanoid forms. With bewildered expressions, the group of heroes all stared incredulously at the two robots, and judging by the fact that All Might, Nezu and Aizawa hadn't batted an eye at it, they could only guess that this was the topic behind the meeting at hand. The tall, red and blue robot with the truck chest knelt down to be closer to the human's eye level, greeting them with a bow of his own. Greetings, UA. Faculty. He greeted. My name is Optimus Prime. And I believe that we have much to discuss. If there was a word that RC could use to describe this evening, it would be uneventful. Honestly, so far, this little outing that Midnight had taken Bumblebee on had been pretty normal, for the most part. She had taken him to a couple of scenic sites around Musutafu, including the beach, an admittedly lovely botanical garden, and now they were at the local art museum. Izuku and the girls had explained to her that Midnight was the modern hero art history teacher at UA, so she figured that she'd take him to a place like this, especially since it was open up late to debut some new and exciting exhibits. Still, though, that didn't stop the night from being fairly dull from RC's perspective. They had been at this for almost 2 hours now, and so far, things had been calm. Still no signs of Decepticons, RC. Momo noted from her vantage point in the passenger seat, with Izuku and Kyoka covering the rear. The heiress pulled herself in through her window and looked to the pink femme's holoform. I think we should just face facts, the Decepticons have no interest in this date. Heck, I doubt they even know about it. Izuku added. RC, however, shook her head. Maybe not, but we can't take that chance. Us Autobots go out on patrol like this every day to make sure that Decepticon activity stays low. She glanced back toward one of the museum windows, seeing Midnight and Brian observing a nearby art piece with happy faces. It's just that today, our patrol involves having to play chaperone. Kyoka rolled her eyes and crossed her arms defiantly. RC, when are you going to admit that you have a problem? The intelligence officer raised a brow back at her. Kyoka, like I said before, I am not Gel. Yes, you are. The punk rocker pressed firmly, taking RC and even Izuku by surprise. I know that you probably don't want to admit it, but seeing someone getting this close with your best friend, it bugs you, doesn't it? Momo was taken aback by Kyoka's behavior, but also impressed that she was this passionate about RC's feelings. Now how about showing that same determination with Izuku, she thought with a slight grin. RC's features scrunched up in frustration, her eyes moving away from the girl and onto her steering wheel in thought. After a few seconds, she gave a conceding sigh. Okay, maybe I do. I want to make sure that B doesn't get his feelings hurt. I've plenty of femmes on Cybertron like Midnight, the ones who think that they can just get away with toying with mechs who stick to them like magnets. Izuku leaned up to the front, sending an empathetic gaze to his friend. RC, I understand how you must feel about that, but I can promise you that Midnight isn't like that. Sure, she may be extremely flirty and, sensual. Momo put it gently. Why yeah, that. But I can tell you from just following her hero work, I've seen how good of a person she is. Izuku pulled up his phone and showed RC an image on it, one of Midnight escorting two little children away from a burning building. Just last week, she saved a family from an arsonist villain who burned down their home. She even, punished the villain right there on the spot. Kyoka smiled and nodded to RC. There, see, does that sound like a bad person? I mean, look how much fun B's having in there. The pink-haired avatar moved her sights back to the museum, seeing B and Midnight both laughing together as the latter pointed out a certain piece of art. Slowly, a smile came to RC's lips, seeing just how much the two were enjoying themselves. Well, I guess you make a, wait. Her focus shifted up toward the roof of the museum, having caught a glimmer of something in the corner of her eye. She zoomed in and saw some small movements and then another shimmer of light, and it was in the shape of a gun barrel. Oh scrap, hold on. Before the kids could ask why, their seatbelts automatically buckled them in and RC's wheels screeched as she pulled away from the curb. And then, bang, a shot had hit the ground where they once were, leaving a dark burn mark on the street and sidewalk. Thankfully there were no bystanders standing there, but every human near the area suddenly screamed and fled when they heard the shot. RC pulled to a stop and both Izuku and Kyoka had to catch their breath, their hands clinging onto their seats for dear life. What the hell was that? Kyoka shouted. I knew it. A Decepticon thought they could get lucky tonight. RC moved her eyes back to the top of the museum, seeing the con in question stand up and stare down directly at her. She saw the shadowy figure make a, come hither, motion with their hand before backing away so they wouldn't be seen. Oh, this one is just asking for trouble. She activated her comm and contacted Bumblebee. B, this is RC. I don't know if you heard that, but I've spotted a con on top of the museum roof. I'm headed up to investigate, but you need to get yourself and Midnight out of there. I've got a plan, you'll know it when you see it. RC, out. So, what do we do now? Izuku asked before all of RC's doors promptly opened. You three are gonna go inside and tell everyone that a villain's been spotted on the roof. RC instructed. Then you'll help Midnight and Bumblebee get to safety as quick as you can, okay. I'll engage this Decepticon. Momo felt a sense of worry start to overtake her. But what if you get spotted? But RC just gave her a wink. Don't worry, I'm an intelligence officer. We're taught how to be stealthy. And if any heroes come on the scene, I'll be sure to get this con away as quick as possible. She reached over and placed a reassuring hand on Momo's shoulder. Once the other humans have been cleared, I'll call in backup. Until then, you guys handle the evacuation, okay? Izuku and the two girls eyed one another, the trio sharing a nod before going back to RC. Okay, we'll follow your lead on this, RC. Izuku climbed out of the back with Kyoka before meeting with Momo up front, leading the Autobot to close her doors. "We'll be quick, don't worry." "Good, I'm counting on you three." With that, RC watched as the three teenagers ran across the street to the museum, and once they were in, she went up to the building herself. She went around the back and found a nice, dark corner with no nearby windows, her holoform blinking out of existence before she transformed into robot mode. She jumped up and climbed to the top of the museum, only to find nothing. RC's optics narrowed. This wasn't a good sign. She pulled her pistol out and started forward, keeping her guard up. "Show yourself, Decepticon," she called out. "You wanted my attention. Well, now you've got it." She continued toward the ventilation shaft and the door to the roof, leaning her head over to see if the con was hiding somewhere. And then, she gasped. There, having been planted on the side of the roof entrance, was a sensor mine, secured on by 8 heavy clamps. "Oh, scrap," pissed. "Ah." The mine went off and its contents blasted out at RC. A purple, gaseous mist. The Autobot's intakes were immediately filled with the mist and she began coughing, the harmful vapor starting to clog up her ventilation system. Hawk hawk hawk. What the, crack. Ow. With a hard hit to the side of her head, RC was taken off her feet, landing so hard that she put a crack in the roof. What's more, a warning light flashed in her optics reading, comlink damaged. Oh, fantastic. How could this get worse? HMHMHMHAHAHAHA. The small chortle that became a boisterous laugh was all RC needed to have that question answered, and at the same time, send a chill through her systems. She recognized that laugh. Her optics darted upward in horror as a slender, feminine figure came into view, now clear for RC to see. The one normal optic and one telescopic optic were more than a giveaway for her, but the accent just cemented it. "Bonjour, RC. Surprised to see me, non. Shish, Shadow Striker. Clang. Ah. Hawk hawk. That is correct, mon chéri." Shadow Striker pressed her foot against the Autobot's midriff as her insidious smirk increased. "It has been far, far too long." RC was scared, confused, and flabbergasted at the same time. How did you, HMPH? But Shadow Striker quickly clamped her hand over her foe's mouth. "Did you really think that Skywarp and Thundercracker were the only ones Starscream summoned to Z's planet? Tisk, 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 you really should have expected otherwise." She traced a finger across RC's cheek, only enraging the intel officer more. "Oh, how I have waited for Z's reunion. Get your hands off me." RC tore her face away from Shadow Striker's hand, glaring up at her. "What do you want? HMPH, isn't it obvious?" Shadow balled one hand into a fist, while using her other to point at her telescopic optic. "I want revenge, chérie. For what you and that little yellow bug did to me." That only made RC tremble in rage. "Are you serious? Just for your eye. If anyone would want revenge more around here, it'd be me." She swept her legs, but Shadow leapt away before she could be tripped, though this allowed RC to get back up and bring out her swords. "What you did, I'll never forgive you for." Shadow Striker landed on her feet and pulled out her rifle, taking aim at RC as they squared off. "Oh, still sparkbroken about that. I would have thought you'd be over it by now. But, c'est la vie, it appears not." She raised a single finger up to her opponent. "But, before we get to the inevitable, I would just like to point out." What could possibly be more important than this right now?" RC shouted, only for Shadow Striker to point straight up. RC craned her head skyward and was met with something she didn't expect, 3 incoming objects that were diving straight down toward the museum. They were small, but fast, and they zoomed straight down past them and toward one of the windows. "I am not the only one on Z's mission," Shadow explained. "For today, Z new recruits earn their keep." Inside, meanwhile, Bumblebee had been on high alert ever since he heard the first shot, and RC contacting him soon after that didn't help. As much as he wished he could help, he couldn't get to the roof without blowing his cover. Plus, he didn't want to get Midnight involved, especially since she was having a good time. "RC, I sincerely hope you know what you're doing," he thought to himself. "Oh, Brian." The blonde holoform shook his head and was brought back to reality when Midnight tapped him on the shoulder, her hand extended to another piece of hero art, one with several heroes all running out toward the viewer. What do you think of this one? See how all of the capes a unique flap to them, no matter where the heroes are running. Brian gave her a single nod, putting on a small smile. Nimari, however, noticed that something seemed off. Brian, are you alright? You don't seem to be in the right headspace. Brian's grin became somewhat sheepish as he rubbed his neck. You know, if you're not interested, all you have to do is say, oh. Nimari brought her hand over her mouth apologetically. I'm sorry, I was about to say something very inappropriate. Brian smiled and shook his head, waving his hand to try and get his point across. Oh, I know you're not offended, but, well, I don't usually date people who don't speak, so this is a first for me. Nimari was met with a kind, happy smile, along with a thumbs up from Brian to help reassure her. Oh, you're so sweet. Come on, why don't we? Bam! All of a sudden, the front door of the museum burst open, causing many of the attendees to gasp all at once. And, if that weren't enough, Brian and Nimari were astonished to see Izuku. Kyoka and Momo were the ones rushing in. Everyone. Izuku belted out. You're all in danger, you need to get out now. A villain just fired at someone from the roof. Momo added. We need to evacuate. At the front, one of the security guards suddenly came forward and placed his hands on the teen's shoulders. Whoa, hold on there, kids. Let's not get jumpy here. If there were any villains around, I would know, thwump. Just then, the entire building shook as if something heavy fell, accompanied by some debris that fell from the ceiling as it cracked slightly. Is that enough proof for ya? Kyoka asked. Good enough for me. Everyone out. The guard pulled down the emergency alarm and all of the museum goers started screaming for their lives, rushing out of the front door while Izuku and Kyoka subtly pushed past them to get to Brian and Nimari. The R-rated heroine was particularly stunned to see them here. Midoriya, Jiro, Yaoyorozu, what in the world is going? No time to explain, Miss Midnight. Izuku asserted. We need to get you and Brian out of here. Kyoka went up to the blonde and whispered, yeah, there's a Decepticon day on the Oufre. Brian's expression hardened up. He knew it. Couldn't we have gone just one night without Decepticon activity? Wait, what is on the roof? Nimari furrowed her brow at the teens and pointed a stern finger at them. I don't know what's going on, but if this is some sort of prank, you can be sure that. Wait. Kyoka raised her hands, silencing the older woman as her jacks raised up. I hear something coming, and it's coming in fast. All of a sudden, the group and all of the evacuating bystanders were met with a bright flash of light coming in through one of the larger windows, and there were 3 objects coming in fast. Shit. Everyone, get down. The people still inside the museum just barely had enough time to do as she advised and then. Crash. Glass flew everywhere as the window was destroyed, the 3 fiery objects having smashed their way directly inside. Brian had pulled Midnight down and shielded her with his body while Izuku did the same with Kyoka, and consequently, Momo as well. The 2 girls were taken aback by how suddenly he had grabbed them both, but they were still thankful that none of them had glass in their eye. Everyone alright? Izuku asked. Why yeah, I think. Kyoka confirmed. Momo nodded up to him. Yes, I think so, too, though, I think we could use our legs back, please. Izuku's eyebrows shot up and he glanced down, seeing that he had somehow straddled Momo's right and Kyoka's left legs. His cheeks flushed red and he backed off immediately, bowing his head low to the ground. I'm so sorry, it was a spur of the moment thing and. Izuku, relax. Kyoka reached forward and ruffled his hair, putting him a bit at ease. We're not mad, far from it. Ya did what ya had to do. Exactly. Even if it did seem a bit precarious. Momo sent a knowing smile over to Kyoka, who rolled her eyes in response. But yes, thank you, Midoriya. The teens all moved their eyes up to see what Momo had saw, and they were left surprised and dumbfounded by what had come crashing through. On the other hand, Midnight was in complete heaven. Well, what do we have here? The R-rated heroine smiled lustfully up to Brian as she gripped onto his arms, while his chest was pressed up to hers. Usually I'm not one for bottom, but I can always make an exception. But when she saw what the teen saw in the corner of her eye, she was also stunned by what was before them all. What in the world? In front of them, as well as many other civilians, were 3 very tiny jets. Not RC jets or anything like that, no, these jets all appeared to be fully functional aircraft. But they were just, really tiny, especially for the models they were based on. In the middle was a white Boeing that had gold details along the front and wings. To its right was a white Concorde with purple detailing on its nose, its wings, and its rear stabilizer. And finally, on the left, was a black and purple Venture Star shuttle with what appeared to be a cannon on its back. All in all, this was just not normal. But the moment the middle one spoke, the three teens had a feeling they knew what these were. Not a bad place we've got here, the Boeing said in a feminine voice. She scanned her surroundings and quickly located their targets, the trio of students, the UA teacher, and the holoform of their interest. Ooh, but lucky us. We didn't even have to search this place for you. Let's go, boys. We've got a job to do. Haha, yes ma'am, the Concorde exclaimed in a husky, masculine voice. Jetstorm, transform. The entire nose of the jet folded up onto its back as its undercarriage unfolded into a pair of black legs, while its forearms unfurled from its rear thrusters. An angular head with a pair of small horns popped out of the rear before the jet's stabilizer folded down onto the being's chest, and before anyone knew it, a red-visored robot was standing before them with a smirk. Hee, let's clean house. Sonar, transform. The black shuttle's front end extended out and split in half, with the nose flipping up to form the robot's feet. Its arms folded out from the sides of its wings while the wings themselves rotated to that they were pointing up on the bot's shoulders. Finally, a black head with a gold faceplate rotated out from the rear of the jet, with a golden chest plate complementing it as well. The bot folded his arms and spoke in a much smoother voice, let's get this over with. Agreed. Runway, transform. The Boeing's transformation seemed to be the simplest of them all, with a pair of strong, black painted legs unfurling out from under the jet while its arms flipped down from the secondary thrusters beneath its wings. The Boeing's rear thrusters and stabilizers folded down to create her chest plate and a smooth-helmed head popped right out afterward, complete with a head crest. Her features were unmistakably feminine, her lips curling up into a smirk as she placed her hands to her hips. All right, let's get down to business. There was a long, drawn-out silence as a wave of shock went through the entire room, leaving the gathered crowd speechless for many minutes. Several, long, agonizing minutes for the three teenagers in particular as they became suddenly quite cold. Everything was blown in less than a minute, just like that. The secret was out. Kyoka grit her teeth and screwed her eyes shut in disbelief. Fuck. Well, that was nice while it lasted. Ah, robot villains. One woman screamed. Kyoka's eyes snapped open, relief washing over her. Oh, thank God, people are stupid. Sonar sighed and lowered his head. Is this seriously what we're going with? I know, I don't like it. Jetstorm muttered, glowering at the humans. Hey, we're not. Oof. Quiet, Motormouth. Runway snapped quietly with a slap to the head. The boss said it's our story and we're sticking to it. She put her smile back on and raising her arms up to the people. What my friend means to say is, yes. We're villains, ones who've gotten their hands on some quite advanced technology. We call ourselves the Aerial Assault Team. Now, who wants a piece of us? Chapter 20, Students and Masters. The dark side, 5 hours earlier. Starscream stood in front of the bridge's control console, its large monitor shining upon him as he reviewed the footage that their probe had retrieved for them. As much as it annoyed him that the probe couldn't locate the Autobots' base due to all of the signal dampening technology they were using, it at least had some uses. It has to be somewhere in the vicinity of this city, but where? He shouted frustratingly in his head. Well, that didn't matter at the moment. What was important was footage he was reviewing right now, that of their enemies in the UA parking lot. They were in the middle of a discussion, and in particular, one point had piqued his interest. So that means I'm not afraid to ask this either. Would you like to go on a little date with me tonight? The dark-haired woman asked, of Bumblebee of all bots. If memory serves, I made an offer to show you around to a few fun places I know, so I would like to make do on that. So, what do you say, big boy? Wanna take a chance? An outing, Sounds interesting, Starscream noted. Ooh, whatcha lookin' at dear, bud? Gah. Starscream jumped around and raised his hands, only to be met by a cackling Swift. Grr, don't do that. Swift merely smiled cheekily as her laughter died down a bit. Hee hee, why not? Starscream deadpanned at her, placing his hands on his hips. Because I'm the commander of this vessel and I said so. The green Decepticon merely waved her hand at him. Ah, you're no fun, Screamer. Besides, I wanted your opinion on my Canadian accent. It's kinda grown on me actually. She swung her arm and gave him a wink. A real humdinger of an accent, don't you know, eh? If you continue to use that accent, I will blast your head off. Starscream growled as he turned back to the monitor. I have no time for this. I'm busy researching what the probe brought back for us today. Any luck with locating their base? Swift asked, shifting back into serious mode. The Seeker commander shook his head, not taking his optics off the screen. No, but it did bring back some interesting footage. He pointed up to Midnight, making Swift raise a curious brow. That woman has offered to take Bumblebee on an outing tonight. I would assume she has no idea of his true nature. Interesting. Swift put a hand to her chin. Any idea who she is? VWOOM. Says here her name is Midnight. Ah. Both Decepticons shouted as high as their vocal processors would allow, with Starscream jumping up and landing in Swift's arms. The copter bot spun around, and saw none other than Nitra standing behind them, with her personal hacking interface pulled up along with a small monitor. Oh, for fragging, does anyone use the actual doors around here? Starscream exclaimed. Nitra just smirked up to them. Hey, I did use the door. You just didn't hear me come in before my cloaker ran out. The duo deadpanned at her before Swift promptly dropped Starscream like a ton of bricks, placing her hands on her hips. Okay, Nitra, so who is this, Midnight, then? Ow. Seems she's a teacher at that educational facility. Nitra explained as she pulled up more screens, containing the woman's personal file. Nimari Kayama, also known as the R-rated heroine, Midnight. Apparently, her quirk is the ability to put people to sleep with the powerful pheromones she emits from her skin. Starscream picked himself off the ground, listening intently with Swift as Nitra went on. Men are more susceptible to her power, and she's got a very kinky personality. This usually leads to the bad guys she faces getting whipped into shape. Swift sneered at that last part. You, organics and their mating rituals disgust me. Bathing in the light of your chosen one's spark is a whole lot more tasteful. And less messy. Nitra simply shrugged it off. Well, seems like either way, she's got a little crush on B-127 there. Starscream facepalmed and groaned. Like I told you, Nitra, he goes by the name, Bumblebee, now. I suggest you update your files on it, despite how nonsensical of a name it is. The Seeker commander faced back toward the screen as Nitra did just that, taking note that Bumblebee had accepted the date for 5:30 in the evening. But perhaps this little outing could make for a good opportunity. If we were to capture those two and propose an ultimatum, then Optimus would have no choice but to reveal the location of the Autobot base. He glanced back toward the magenta femme with a raised brow. Where is Shadow Striker? Bonjour. Yeah. Starscream stumbled back as the assassin in question lowered down from the ceiling, once again hanging from her own grappling hook by her leg. His right optic twitched and he threw his hands up. Why does no one come in through the door? Commander, I have been in here for several megacycles. Shadow Striker swung down and landed on her feet, placing a hand on her hip. And I have overheard everything. Her lips curled into an eager smirk and she rubbed her thumb and forefinger together. I heard that you needed a little bug to be squished. Yes, you could say that. Starscream straightened himself out, folding his hands behind his back as he gave Shadow a skeptic gaze. That is, if you think you can handle it. Shadow Striker placed a hand over her chest, bowing her head to him. I am certain I can, she affirmed, her self-assuredness evident in her voice. However, we must also plan for any Autobot resistance that may follow little Bumblebee. After all, I doubt that he would accept an outing with Z's human woman without planning for our interference. Nitra rubbed her thumb on her chin, finding interest in the strategy. Plot around their planning. Good thinking, Shadow. Want me to come along? However, the sniper shook her head at this. Je suis désolé, Nitra, but for Z's mission, a more persuasive hand will be needed. She shifted her optics towards Starscream and bowed her head. If it is all right, I would hope that Thundercracker and Z new recruits would accompany me, as I feel that Z's skills would be prudent in Z's operation. How do you figure that? Starscream asked. Z outing will most likely be in a public place, non. If that is Z case, then Z mini-cons can pose as villains while they are apprehending our targets. Shadow gestured toward all of them. After all, if one of us were to do it, our cover would be blown immediately. But since Z mini-cons are Z size of humans, they will not be a suspect. Swift and Starscream eyed one another in thought, the former admitting to the good points that her colleague had made. Makes sense to me. After all, if Megs finds out we blew our cover, he'd come straight here and throttle all of us. She jabbed her thumb at Starscream. Though it'd be mostly him. Starscream nodded without thinking first. Yes, wait a nano-click. His outburst got a few snickers from the femmes, but he brushed it off to get back on topic. Never mind. Point is, the plan is sound, now all that is left to do is to find out when to properly strike. Hey, boss. Nitro piped up, getting the Seeker's attention. I've done some digging and, well, I got something interesting. She pulled up another small screen and showed off the poster she had found, one advertising a new exhibit opening at the M02 Hero Art Museum. And the event was happening at 7 o'clock this evening. So, what do you think? Look like a good place to go on a date. The commander's features twisted into a nefarious grin, tapping his fingertips together eagerly. Oh, indeed, Shadow Striker, go fetch Thundercracker and the mini-cons. Tell them that we mobilize in 4 megacycles. M02 Hero Art Museum, present. As the two sides stared down one another, Izuku had to admit, he never would have seen this coming. To think that Starscream would go to such lengths to ambush them out in public like this, while keeping to their cover was a move that he didn't expect the Seeker to do. And judging by everyone else, they were also pretty stunned that the cons were being so bold. And of course, Midnight was just utterly baffled. Could someone please tell me what's going on here? Yeah, I've gotta agree with her. Kyoko whispered. What's with the whole villain act? You wouldn't think Decepticons would care about their cover. At first, Izuku wasn't sure what to think either, but then he remembered that even Starscream had someone to answer to. Something tells me Megatron must have told Starscream to keep their true nature a secret, too, the Greenette resolved. Still, doesn't exactly help our situation any. Momo nodded gravely. You're right, Midoriya. Mini-cons passing for villains is one thing, but the only ones who can help us are much larger. And if they're spotted, I doubt anyone will be convinced that they're. What are you all whispering about? Midnight demanded, catching the trio off guard. Izuku started, raising his hands to his teacher. We're just trying to come up with a plan. Midnight furrowed her brow at them and shook her head. No, I refuse to have you three put into any more danger than you already are. She reached her hand up to Brian's cheek, stroking it tenderly. Brian, get the kids out of here. I'll hold these villains off until backup arrives. She saw the blonde's eyes widen in concern, but in a move that stunned even him, she leaned up and pecked him on the cheek. Don't worry, I'll be fine. She sent him a wink and a thumbs up. This isn't my first rodeo, you know. I'll keep these villains from making off with any art or money. Sorry ma'am, but I think you're mistaken here. Runway spoke up, bringing the group's attention back to the air assault team. Because to be frank, we're not here for any valuables. The thrusters on her arms began to light up with brilliant flames, making the humans back away. We're here for you too. Before Midnight even had a chance to process that, Runway lifted her arms and blasted out a powerful stream of flame at the group, causing them all to duck out of the way once again. The other museum patrons screamed and all began to make for the door again, which Jetstorm noticed. Yeah, that's right, get out of here. He brought his hands together and a ball of wind energy was created in his palms, which he blasted out to send all of the other humans out the door faster. The wind was so powerful that it even slammed the doors shut behind them. And stay out. Sonar chortled at his teammates' action. Hey, good. Now we won't have any interruptions. Let the hunt begin. He raised his leg and slammed a foot down, causing a huge seismic blast to ripple through the ground and toward their targets. Without warning, the floor erupted from beneath their feet, sending marble and parts of the foundation flying up at them while taking them down. HMPH, too easy. Izuku rubbed the back of his head, struggling to get up after that massive blast. But he immediately went on high alert when he couldn't see the girls, Midnight or Brian, in the rubble. Oh god, Kyoka, Yaoyorozu. We're all right, Midoriya, Momo called out, raising her hand from behind a mound. Yeah, we, ga. Izuku's head snapped around and he saw Kyoka near another pile of debris. However, he also saw the wires on her earlobes were being stretched out, trapped beneath the wreckage. Ah, my jacks are caught. The boy got to his feet and made an immediate beeline for her location. Hold on, I'll get you out. Thankfully, he didn't have to use his quirk to lift this much, thanks to all those months training on the beach. Within a few seconds, he had her out. There, you should be, oh. Momo had regrouped with them at that moment. Izuku, Kyoka, are you two alright? Suppose not. It's bad, isn't it? Kyoka grimaced. Izuku cringed as he reached down, gently grasping her jacks only for her to wince in pain. If you classify, bloodied and bruised, as bad, then. Crap, I can't do anything with these, now. Kyoka cursed. Now how are we gonna, shit. Get down. FWOOOSH. The perplet tacked her friends down as twin streams of flame blasted over their heads, the intense heat nearly burning their hair just by being a few feet away from it. The three shifted their sights onto runway, the mini-con lady stalking her way toward them. Sorry, kids, nothing personal. She apologized with raised fists. But you're in our way, and orders are orders. Jetstorm arrived and took a battle-ready stance. Hey, yeah, so you might as well just give up now. His hands began whirling with wind energy again. Or else we're gonna have to get rough on ya. It doesn't have to be like this. Sonar advised, crossing his arms again. Just let us carry out our mission and we won't have to, snap. Hey. They were all caught off guard when a cracking whip wrapped itself around Sonar's neck, and astonishingly, he was pulled down onto his back in a second. The other mini-cons and students whirled around and were met with Midnight and Brian holding onto the whip, the duo having taken their target down. Sorry, but I'm afraid that I'll have to disappoint you. Midnight said with a soft glare. Just like how you all disappointed me by ruining my date. Jetstorm and Runway didn't take too kindly to that, though. Hey, life ain't fair, lady, the former Jetbot fired back, building up wind energy in his hands again. And just for that, you've lost any mercy we'd have given ya. BWOOOM. Brian's eyes widened and he quickly pulled Midnight out of the way, the concussive air blast putting a hole right through the roof instead. Oh, that does it. Kids, get downwind. Midnight shot up and thrust her hand forward, her sedative mist wafting off of her hand in a huge wave. The students all did what she said, covering their noses for good measure as the pinkish mist enveloped the air assault team. Night, date wreckers. Ow. Gross. Jetstorm grimaced, trying to wave the mist away. The heck is this stuff? Did this come out of her skin? Sonar asked. Why are organics so gross? Would you two relax? It's not like it can affect you, anyways. Runway rolled her optics before transforming into her jet mode, her engines winding up loud. Just blow it away and you'll be fine. Jetstorm and Sonar followed her example and went into their own alt modes, blowing the mist away with the aid of their turbines. WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. The trio transformed back into their robot modes and Runway shook her head. No big deal. Midnight, however, was left stunned. What? How did? Why were you not? Runway sighed and placed her hands on her hips. Surprised, are we? Let me let you in on a little something now that all the riff-raff is gone, lady, she gestured between herself and her teammates. S3, we're not actually robot villains. We're alien robots from another world entirely. Sonar continued. Ones who serve for a great and glorious cause. He gestured over to the three teenagers, who were backed up against a far wall. Just ask them, they know. The R-rated heroine's eyebrows shot up in shock and she whipped her head toward Izuku, Momo and Kyoka, the three glancing away awkwardly. Children, is this true? They couldn't help but wince at how harsh she made that sound. It was obvious that she was disappointed in them for keeping something this big such a secret, but the jig was officially up now. Kyoka took a deep breath and nodded her head. Yes, it is. There, see. That wasn't so hard, now was it? Jetstorm said with a taunting voice, earning him glares from all of them. Ah, but we didn't even get to the best part. Your date. He's one of us, too. Now that made Midnight's eyes really widen, almost bugging out of her head after hearing those words. Slowly, she craned her head over to Brian, who wore a horrified face of his own. He noticed how she was staring at him and he went to reach his hand out to her, only for her to step back. Brian, is this true, too? Bumblebee felt gutted at how scared she sounded, especially since he was partially responsible for it. He wore a saddened frown and lowered his head in shame, only for Izuku to intervene right there. Miss Midnight, we promise that we'll explain everything soon. But right now, we need to get out of WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. Before anyone knew it, the air assault team all transformed back into their aircraft modes again, hovering above the ground as they put their engines into high gear. Alright, enough with the sappy stuff and the revelations for one night. Runway exclaimed, her 4 jet boosters roaring to life. It's time we really take care of business. Oh crap, run. At Kyoka's shout, the 4 humans and Bumblebee's holoform all made a break for it, with the jets zooming off through the halls of the museum to try and cut them off. Quick, to the back exit. We need to out of here. Shadow Striker, you idiot. HMPH, tell me how you really feel, Cherie. RC was fuming. It was one thing that the Decepticon she hated most was on this planet, but it was another that she had just sent in 3 mini-cons to stage an assault on a human facility. In one fell swoop, you just blew our whole cover here on Earth. Are you insane? Shadow Striker rolled her optic and scoffed. PFF'd, please, you think I would be ignorante enough to actually blow our cover. Not even Megatron wishes to have humans officially know about us here on Earth. She wagged her finger at RC and shook her head. No, rather, Starscream came up with a rather clever idea, for once. That is to have Z mini-cons pose as villains in order to stage Z's little assault. But why? RC demanded before rushing forward, taking Shadow Striker by surprise, but only slightly. The assassin was able to do a stunning backflip away from the sword strikes, coming down in a crouch before taking aim and firing back at RC with her rifle. But, with some expertly timed swings, RC managed to deflect many of the blasts as she started forward again. She leapt at Shadow with her blades up high, but then the assassin pulled out an energy machete from her back, using it to stop RC in her tracks. Grr, why would you come here? Why stage this operation in front of humans? It can't just be to mess with us, can it? Oh, but it is, RC. Shadow Striker assured. And you can be assured we will not leave empty-handed. The purple femme swept RC's feet out from under her and pulled up her rifle again, taking more shots at her. RC rolled out of the way, however, recovering her own pistol in the process. Not gonna happen. Pew pew pew. Before either of them knew it, they started a firefight on the roof of the building, both femmes blasting at each other in near darkness with the only light coming from their own laser fire. I won't let you take Bumblebee. This made Shadow Striker pause, allowing another laugh to escape her. RC, who said we just wanted Bumblebee. Ka blam. They were suddenly taken by surprise when a loud explosion was heard from the back of the museum, the 2 combatants taking a brief glance down, to see a completely destroyed back entrance. The doors were blown off their hinges, the wall was partially torn down, and there were bright flames burning out of the entryway. But what horrified RC the most was the sight of Izuku, Momo, Kyoka and Midnight, the 4 having been blown away from the building the moment the blast happened. Brian was among them as well, but since he was a holoform, she knew he was okay. The others, though, no. Pow. Ow. Without warning, Shadow Striker had fired an energy net from her wrist, capturing RC within before it anchored itself to the roof. And then it proceeded to shock her. Zeet. Og. Oh, what a pity. Shadow Striker went over and kneeled next to RC, the net stopping its shock for a moment. It would seem that your little allies have been, how you say, lit up. You stay away from them, you sick little. RC, you are hardly in Z position to threaten me. Shadow noted, reaching down to trail her finger along her cheek again. Though I have no doubt that we will be meeting again very soon. But do not worry, I will be certain to take care of Bumblebee. And who knows, her smirk returned as she stood back up, knowing how RC would react to this. Perhaps if you are lucky, I will spare him of the same fate that befell poor, innocent, little, Tailgate. As she expected, RC's optics flared to life, becoming a bright yellow in contrast with her usual blue as she began trashing against the net. You keep his name out of your sick, demented, filthy mouth, you bitch. She didn't even realize she had slipped into Earth dialect, she was so mad, and it only got worse when the energy net shocked her again. Ah, Shadow. I swear, if you do anything to Bumblebee, your head will be on a pike. The assassin smiled in satisfaction as she stepped away from the helpless femme. Ah, now there is ZRC I know. Z warrior who hides under Z false guise of an innocent intelligence officer. Z one who took my optic from me, too bad I still have a job to do. She went to the edge of the roof, giving RC a shrug as she started to fall back. Ah well, perhaps some other time. Shadow. You get back here, RC hollered, but could only watch as the assassin fell backward toward the ground. Shadow. The first thing any of the humans felt after getting blown up out of the museum was their heads pounding like mad. Not unexpected since they did all land pretty hard on the pavement, but it still wasn't pleasant. Erg, God, that sucked. Kyoka muttered, rubbing her temple as a nick in her forehead bled. Everyone alright? Define, alright. Momo called back, her own ears ringing. Miss Midnight. I'm fine, more or less. Midnight winced as her palms bled, her wound stinging with every twitch of her hand. And what made matters worse was that her whip was nowhere in sight. Ah, we need to get, crash. Ah. The woman and her students all gasped as runway, Jetstorm and Sonar all smashed their way through even more of the back wall, taking down a huge chunk of it entirely. The three jets loomed over them before transforming again, with Runway folding her arms at them. I suggest you all surrender now, she advised. We don't want this to end badly for you, after all. No way. Izuku barked back, you won't succeed. We've beaten you cons at every turn, and we'll do it. The Autobots keep beating the Decepticons, brat. Jetstorm fired back, you humans may have helped, but you aren't the deciding factor. We've got the numbers here this time, so now it's time you felt that. Kyoka just glared back at them. Sorry, last I checked, there was 4 of you, Screech. Everyone's head snapped around to see Bumblebee's vehicle mode come zipping around the corner, with Brian himself standing defiantly. And 6 of us, Kyoka smirked. Midnight furrowed her brow in confusion. Wait, 4, 6. Jiro, I know you're not bad at counting, what are? There are 2 more bots on the roof. Izuku explained, taking the hero by surprise. 1 on our side, 1 on theirs. Don't worry, I'm sure she's got that other one handled. Boom. Ah. Shit. Kyoka's hands flew to her ears, her sensitive hearing once again picking up the familiar sonic boom much too loudly. Not this again. As if on cue, a certain large, blue MiG fighter jet came bursting out of the sky and down toward the museum, diving down directly toward the humans and the mini-cons. WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. Within seconds, Thundercracker transformed into robot mode, slamming down onto the ground hard enough to make the earth tremble. Midnight was left flabbergasted. Oh my god. Thundercracker directed his red optics down to the mini-cons, giving them a small grin. Runway, you and your team have done well. I'd consider this first mission a success. Thank you, sir. It was simple, really. Runway assured. Now there's only one thing left to take care of. Thundercracker moved his focus over to Bumblebee, the yellow beetle revving his engine as his holoform glowered at him. You wanna play the hero for your woman friend, Bumblebee? Then come on, take your best shot. Midnight glanced up toward the blonde, still stunned this was even happening. Bumblebee. Before she could even ask, though, the Volkswagen shot off toward Thundercracker, almost as if it didn't care about what would happen to it. No. Izuku pleaded. Don't do it. Wait for backup. Kyoka screamed. But it was to no avail. Bumblebee went ramming into Thundercracker, or at least he would have if the Seeker hadn't stomped on his hood. A pained cry came from the beetle as Brian threw his head back, opening his mouth as if to scream, right as it started to glitch out of existence. Midnight was left stunned as she saw this, and was left at a loss for words as Thundercracker kicked Bumblebee away, allowing him to transform into his true form. This must be some sort of dream. Momo shook her head solemnly. I'm sorry, Miss Midnight, but it isn't. She sent a determined gaze to Bumblebee and raised her fist. Come on, get up, Bumblebee. Don't give up. Bumblebee shook his head, wearing a determined face of his own as he stood, only for another bot to come crashing down onto him from the roof. She landed on his back and slammed the butt of her rifle onto the back of his neck, knocking him out cold. The teens couldn't believe what they had seen. No. HM, well, little Bumblebee, the femme picked him up by the head, crouching down so she was level with him. It has been far too long. I believe that we have some catching up to do. Kyoka's lips curled into a snarl as she balled her fists. Who are you, and why the heck are you French? HMPH, who am I? Shadow Striker picked Bumblebee up and slung him over her shoulder, sending a condescending gaze to the humans. I am Shadow Striker, the Decepticon's top assassin. And it would appear that our business is nearly done here. She glanced over to Thundercracker and gave him a nod. You know what to do, Mon Frere. The Seeker returned the gesture without question. Right, mini-cons, keep the children away. On it, boss. Jetstorm obliged as he and Sonar grabbed the girls, with Runway kicking down Izuku to pin him under her foot. Ow. Hey. Izuku pushed up against her foot, with green energy starting to crackle through his arms. Gee, get off of me. Midoriya, no. Midnight shouted. Don't use your quirk in public, you're not licensed ye. The three teens could only watch in horror as they saw their teacher get scooped up by Thundercracker, who kept a firm grip on her even as she squirmed and thrashed in his hand. Grr, let me go. I swear, when I get out of this, all of you will be sorry. But Thundercracker promptly brought her straight up to his face, speaking in a stoic tone, apologies, miss, but that won't be happening. While I personally think that kidnapping you won't get us anywhere in the long run, well, orders are orders. He craned his head down to the mini-cons and gave them their orders. All right team, ditch the kids and let's get out of here before the authorities show. Of course, Thundercracker. Runway concurred, stomping on Izuku's chest hard enough to knock the wind out of him as her companions shoved Kyoka and Momo back to the ground. In mere moments, all three of them had transformed into their jet modes, with Midnight screaming as she was trapped in Thundercracker's pilot seat. She could only stare in horror through the glass as the canopy sealed tight, the sight of her students bloodied and bruised making her heart sink. She prayed they could hear her as she shouted, "Kids! Get out of here! Go to the school, find All Might, get help!" Boom! And just like that, the four jets blasted back off into the sky, with a ground bridge portal opening in midair for them before disappearing altogether. No! Momo cried out, disbelief etched into her and her friends' faces. Miss Midnight. Tisk, such a shame. Shadow Striker said as her own ground bridge portal opened close to her as well. But worry not. If you are lucky, you shall see your teacher and Z's one again. She balanced Bumblebee on her shoulder as she turned toward the vortex. Provided that you follow Commander Starscream's incoming message to Z letter. But for now, au revoir. With tears brimming her eyes, Momo's lips contorted into an uncharacteristic snarl, her scowl boring through the French femme with contempt. She balled her hand into a fist and used her quirk, creating a magnetic tracer that she quickly threw at Shadow Striker. The tracer managed to stick to the back of her leg just as she stepped into the portal with Bumblebee, leaving the three teens disheartened and angry. See if you get that message, Flucy. That didn't happen. Kyoka's hands flew up to her face as her own tears began to flow, the reality of the situation starting to sink in. Izuku and Momo rushed over to her, the former kneeling down to grasp her shoulders in support. Please, tell me that didn't just happen. Izuku screwed his eyes shut, trying to hold back his own waterworks. I'm afraid it did. God damn it. Momo took a deep breath as she raised her hand, creating a locator that went with the tracer she just made. Unfortunately, it did. But we're not out of this yet. Shink. The trio were on guard the moment they heard what must have been a blade cutting through something, only to be met with the sight of RC jumping off the roof just a moment later. The pink femme landed, rather awkwardly on her side before transforming into vehicle mode, her holoform appearing in a flicker of light. RC. Kyoka got up and sprinted over to her friend, the pinkette breathing heavily in the driver's seat. "Hey, are you okay?" "Barely," RC muttered. "Those shocks nearly fried my neural net. I'm glad I was able to reach one of my swords in time." She opened her eyes, her features pained and saddened as she grit her teeth. But I was too late." RC's hand balled into a fist and she punched her center console. "I couldn't help you, I couldn't help Midnight, and I couldn't help Bumblebee. I let Shadow Striker get the better of me, again." While it was clear that RC was upset, the three couldn't help but take note of that last part. Again. "RC, what do you mean?" Izuku asked. "Nothing to be concerned about right now." RC collected herself, reaching up to clench her steering wheel with a serious gaze. "What does matter now is how we're going to save Bee and your teacher." Kyoka furrowed her brow and crossed her arms. "Easier said than done. We've got no clue where they bridged to. They could literally be anywhere." "Well, it's a good thing I thought of that, then." Momo piped up, raising the locator for them all to see. Her three friends looked to her as she showed them the device, which displayed an image of the globe along with a red blip near the northern end of it. "Before she left, I tossed a tracer onto Shadow Striker that's on a specific frequency. With this, we'll be able to track her down easily." The three were taken by surprise, to be sure, but it was a welcome one. "Wait, seriously?" RC asked. "How were you able to come up with something like that?" A proud smile took hold of Momo's features and she chuckled. HM, well, over the course of our training, Windblade thought it'd be a good idea to show me some of your tech. I didn't really see the point in it at first, but thankfully in this situation, it's paid off." She zoomed in on the blinking dot, eager to find out where the cons were. "Alright, it says here that, oh." Momo pursed her lips at where the tracer was leading them, and she quickly came to one conclusion: yeah, we're going to want to get Prime in on this, quickly. Honk honk. Everyone's heads snapped up at the sound of the loud truck horn approaching, and before they knew it, a pair of headlights came from around the corner. "I don't think we'll have any trouble with that," RC noted, as Optimus Prime himself pulled to a stop behind the burning building. All at once, both cab doors opened and out came Agent Fowler and All Might, the latter's features etched with concern. Young Midoriya. Young Jiro. Young Yaoyorozu. The number one hero went straight up to his pupil and set his hands on his shoulders. "Are any of you hurt? What happened here?" He saw how sad Izuku's eyes had become just by his arrival, and the boy couldn't help but hang his head low in shame. Young Midoriya. All Might, I'm sorry. Izuku clenched his fists as he finally let the tears flow, the gravity of the situation hitting him. His best friend and his teacher were gone. He had failed not only them, but his mentor for hesitating to use the quirk he gave to him. "We let them get away, we couldn't stop them from taking them." Fowler came up and put his own hand on Izuku's shoulder. "Son, I know what happened must have been intense, but who exactly got taken?" "I believe I know." Prime pulled up a bit further, stopping again directly in front of RC. "We detected multiple Decepticon signals here several cycles ago. We attempted to get here as fast as possible, but by then, the signals were gone, and Bumblebee's along with them." There was a long moment of silence, with the tension so thick one could cut through it. Yet it was Optimus who took the proverbial blade to it. "RC, what happened?" The humans heard a sob from RC before she answered. I'm sorry, Prime, they took him." She suddenly pulled a 180 turn to face away from her commander. "Shadow Striker took Bumblebee and Midnight and there was nothing I could do about it." "Shadow Striker, here. The Decepticons have another new addition," All Might exclaimed. "And they took Midnight along with Bee. Thundercracker and Skywarp must not have been alone when they came to Earth." Izuku figured. The Decepticons have even more assets that we didn't know about. He went up to the Prime and continued on, "Optimus, they didn't just send Shadow Striker on this mission. There was also Thundercracker and 3 others, mini-cons that could transform into jets." That last piece of info caught Prime's full attention. "Wait, more mini-cons?" "Yes, they said their names were Sonar, Runway and Jetstorm." Momo informed. Ring any bells? Once again, there was a pause before Optimus replied. Unfortunately, yes, I do know those names. And they shouldn't be with the Decepticons. Off in the distance, the sound of fire engine sirens and blaring horns could be heard approaching the museum, leading the Prime to kick his engine back to life. We cannot stay here for much longer. Come, I've instructed the Autobots to gather at UA. Hi, we can continue this discussion there. This took the teens off guard, however. Wait, why UA? Ho ho, you'll see. All Might said with a thumbs up. The past 2 hours had been nothing but surreal for the faculty of UA. Hi. Meeting giant robots from another world was one thing, but to hear that 9 of their own students had been taking an active part in helping them acclimate to Earth over the past year, several months, or even just the past 2 weeks, was simply mind-blowing. Optimus had informed them all of everything, including the fact that they were searching for their lost ship, the Ark, and how this all came about with how Izuku had found Bumblebee on Dagobah Beach almost a year ago. He also told how the other 8 students had gradually joined them, as well as how helpful they had been when it came to their war against the evil Decepticons, which was astonishing in and of itself. Overall, it was a lot to swallow. And it didn't help when the other Autobots and the students themselves had arrived via ground bridge after Prime, Fowler and All Might left. Apparently, something serious was going down nearby, and Optimus wanted the whole team here just in case something happened. And needless to say, the students themselves were flabbergasted as well. This isn't some sort of elaborate prank, is it? Mina asked, eyeing both the Autobots and their teachers. Are we being punked? Why do all of our teachers suddenly know about this? Because Principal Nezu specifically asked Optimus to tell them, we told you this already, Ishido. Aizawa deadpanned. Indeed. No tricks here, Nezu said in his usual happy tone. Simply a little idea to help bolster the ranks of this circle of trust. Powerloader couldn't help but facepalm at the sight of one student in particular. Ya know, I really shouldn't be surprised that my most talented yet destructive student is a part of all this. He crossed his arms at the Pinkett, shaking his head. I knew the day you came in with a floating satellite with a laser cutter on it that something had to be up. Nonplussed, May simply gave her teacher a salute. Nice to see you too, Mr. Powerloader. I can't wait to show you all the babies that Red Alert made with me now that you know everything. Red Alert himself couldn't help but facepalm, something that Powerloader could empathize with. Hey man, trust me, I feel your pain. I've had to deal with this level of insanity since the beginning of the semester. Oh, trust me, I'm aware of how much of a handful she can be. Red noted. I've gotten used to it, though, sort of. Snipe came up and raised his hands to the teens. Believe you me, kids, we had pretty much no idea we'd be sucked into this today either. We're trying to adjust to all this as much as y'all are, trust me. Bulkhead scratched his helm, surprised at how straightforward the man was. Huh, well, honestly we all thought Prime was here to meet with just All Might, Aizawa and Nezu, too. He gave the cowboy a shrug. So I guess that means both sides have been kept in the dark. Ow. This is so frustrating, Strongarm bemoaned before bringing up her holographic data pad full of rules and regulations. Regulation number 41227 says that a commanding officer should keep his unit informed of every decision he makes as to not take them off their guard. Optimus is in complete violation of the rules here. Oh, so what? You really gonna arrest a Prime? Sideswipe asked sarcastically. Well, no, but it's still annoying that it had to happen in the first place. Denki placed his hands behind his head. Well, on the bright side, we don't have to hide the big secret from our teachers anymore. Eijiro gave a thumbs up in agreement. Yeah, I'd say that counts as a win, plus more help in the war with the cons is always welcome. Yes, about this war, Vlad King stepped up to the teenagers with his arms crossed. His huge frame, big teeth and blood-red attire making for an intimidating combination. He leaned forward and quirked a brow at them. Is it true what Optimus Prime said? About you kids actually participating in active roles in the war effort? Including actual battles? All of the teens eyed one another warily, some even swallowing fearfully at the question. However, ultimately, Tenya stepped up, the class rep wearing a resolute expression. Yes, it is true. While we tend to stay away from the conflict most of the time, should we end up in the thick of it for whatever reason, we've been given permission by Agent Fowler to use our quirks to defend ourselves. Even though none of you even have provisional licenses yet. Vlad added. Well, we technically haven't been using our quirks in public places, Ochako emphasized. Mostly it's just been at the Autobot base where we've been training for the past couple of weeks. Windblade stepped up and extended a hand. It's only recently where they've started using their quirks to defend themselves out in the field, sir. There were a couple instances where it's happened beforehand, but like they said, for the most part, we've kept them away from the action. I still don't know about all this. Ectoplasm spoke up, the hero's mouth unmoving as he spoke. The fact that the children are using their quirks while unsilenced is one thing, but the fact that they're taking active roles in a war is another entirely. Hey, personally speaking, I think we've been doing a pretty good job in keeping them all safe. Sunstreaker contended, staking his own claim in the conversation. Look, we've been fighting this war for eons, so we know how dangerous it is and how high the risks are. We've been pretty careful when it comes to the kids up till this point, and we always make sure to get them all home before curfew. Cementos closed his eyes and lowered his head slightly. That may be true, but if they are taking part in battles, he opened his eyes back up and narrowed them slightly at Sunstreaker. Who's to say that something horrible will happen eventually? There was a bit of extended silence after Cementos said that, with all three sides hesitant to respond to that. Really? No one's got the guts to speak except for me. Springer broke the silence, bringing their attention right to him. Alright, fine. Here are my thoughts on the whole thing. He jabbed a thumb over to the students, pointing out Eijiro and Mina in particular. Listen up, heroes, I may not have seen all of these kids in action, but just by seeing what these two did, I think it's safe to say that they're well on their way to becoming amazing fighters. And given their past credentials, they've been bringing down Viacons pretty effectively. Aw, thanks, Springer. Mina waved. You're a peach. Eijiro gave him a thumbs up. Yeah, man, thanks for vouching for us. Hey, Wreckers gotta stick together, even if you do still have training wheels on. Springer returned. Honk honk. Everyone's heads perked up at the sound of Prime's return, with RC trailing along behind him. Ah, perfect timing. The humans disembarked from their respective rides and the two bots transformed, with RC visibly limping while Izuku, Momo and Kyoko were visibly battered and bruised. Oh, scrap. RC. Several bots exclaimed. The pink femme fell to one knee, causing Red Alert to rush right over to her. Hey, guys. Don't move. Red advised as he brought out his laser scalpel, getting right to work in patching up RC's wounds. I'll get you fixed up. Deku, Kyoka, Momo, Ochako and the other students quickly rushed up to their friends, worried at the sight of their injuries. Oh my gosh, what in the world happened? Neither of the three had given her an answer, instead glancing away shamefully, and it was only then that Ochako noticed they were short by two important people. Guys, where's Bumblebee, and Midnight? They were, Izuku was about to answer, but cut himself off when he saw several of their teachers approach them from behind, and the Autobots were just hanging out in robot mode. Vlad King placed his fists on his hips, giving the Greenette a serious look. Yes, where is Midnight, Mr. Midoriya? We thought she had gone out on a date. Before we get to that, I think it's necessary to ask. Kyoka flung her hands up and waved frantically at all of the heroes. What the hell are all of you doing here? You're not supposed to be seeing any of this. All Might glanced up to Optimus with an awkward grin. Wow, you really didn't give anyone the memo on this, did you? Aside from Springer, no. Optimus admitted. I was hoping it would be an exciting surprise, but given the circumstances that have just arose, I can see now that won't be the case. He set his optics down to the students and explained, you see, children, I received a call from Principal Nezu here last night, requesting that more of your teachers should be allowed to know of our secret, just in case. Everyone was stunned to hear that all of this was on such short notice. Wait, so this was all planned last night? Momo reiterated. I must say, I'm surprised, Optimus. I didn't think you would agree to something like this so soon. Well, given that Unicronus' presence on Earth was recently confirmed for us, I believed that it would be a good time to bring more members into our fold. Optimus sighed and shook his head. And it would seem that now is a perfect time as any. He craned his head over toward the faculty to deliver the news. I regret to inform you that both your colleague and my scout have been abducted by Decepticon agents. A collective gasp rang through the crowd of teachers, and the other 6 students were left flabbergasted. B. Bumblebee is gone. Mei's expression fell before she whipped over to Izuku, desperately grasping him by the shoulders. Please tell me this is some sort of joke. Izuku's own frown deepened and his head fell again in shame, which only made Mei start to tear up. No, muscles, please. Mei, I'm sorry. Kyoka apologized, placing a hand on the inventor's arm. There was nothing we could do. They had us outnumbered and outgunned thanks to them bringing 3 new mini-cons they somehow got. That piqued the Autobots' interests instantly. Wait, they had more mini-cons? Bulkhead asked. I thought they only had Frenzy. Well, they have more now. They call themselves the Aerial Assault Team. Momo explained before raising a brow to Optimus. And Prime thinks he knows where these minis came from. At least, I think that's what you're implying. Indeed, I am. Optimus confirmed, moving a hand up to his temple. But in order to accurately explain all of this, we must go back to something we haven't revisited in a while. After tapping his temple, Prime's eyes began to flash brightly and within seconds, a holographic schematic began to be projected from them. And not just any schematic either. It was the one that belonged to the Ark itself. By this point, we all know about the Ark, correct? Of course. All Might saluted. You just explained it all to our colleagues here not too long ago. The number 1 hero placed a hand to his chin. I assume these new mini-cons have something to do with it. That is correct. Optimus nodded before pointing to a section of the Ark's hull, which started flashing bright red to indicate the exact spot. The schematic zoomed in as Prime continued. As all of you know by now, the Ark's primary mission was to search the galaxy to find and mine Energon to bring back to Cybertron. However, the Ark also had several secondary missions as well, with one of them being to help find a new home for a particularly powerful group of mini-cons. Snipe promptly raised his hand. If you don't mind me asking, what exactly are mini-cons? Jazz was the one to provide that answer. Mini-cons are basically tiny Cybertronians that live on our moons, ones that are about the size of you humans. They come in a lot of shapes and sizes and can transform into almost anything. Some of them can become weapons. Sideswipe furthered, while others are deployers, like the ones that Springer has. The teachers all promptly turned their heads to Springer, the wrecker rolling his optics and sighing. Yeah, had a feeling that'd happen. Sawback, Fangblade, show him. With that, he shot his disc-shaped mini-cons off his shoulders, the duo transforming into their wolf and Smilodon modes. Needless to say, the entire faculty was stunned. Well, at least some of them. Others were a lot more excited at the sight of them. Oh my goodness. 13 gushed, going up to pet Sawback on the head. They're so cute. Are all mini-cons like this? Not all of them, no. Sunstreaker denied. Most of them have normal robot modes like us. Very few minis look like animals. Deployers and weaponizers are actually the least common type of mini-cons, really. Windblade added. The most common type are the ones that transform into regular vehicles, like us. Those ones in particular are capable of granting us bigger bots power-ups that enhance our combat capabilities when they link up with us. Cementos scratched his chin, intrigued by the prospect. Fascinating. But that leads me to ask, why was your ship transporting these mini-cons in the first place? Optimus shook his head disappointingly. With the way the war was going, and how less and less Energon was being produced from Cybertron, we had a feeling that the Decepticons would try to seek alternate methods of powering themselves in order to win the war. He gestured over to Sawback and Fangblade. And given how powerful mini-cons can be, it was only natural to assume that they would be a possible target. So, we gave several mini-cons the option to board the Ark in special stasis panels, which they happily agreed to. Red Alert stood up, having finished his work on RC. They all agreed that they didn't want to be used in that way, especially given how cruel they knew the Decepticons to be. He craned his head down as his tone grew much more somber. However, there was a downside to being in these stasis panels. Their core programming could easily be rewritten. So you're saying that these 3 mini-cons have been reprogrammed to follow the cons' orders without question? Denki asked. Precisely. Red Alert nodded before turning to Optimus. And I suppose this solves our little mystery of what those 3 unidentified Cybertronian signals were yesterday. Yes, and if these mini-cons were found by the Decepticons in Texas yesterday, then it stands to reason that there may be several more that were launched from the Ark upon its planetfall all of those eons ago. Prime concluded. President Mike stepped forward and placed his hands on his hips. Okay, so now that we got the down low on WHO captured Midnight and your boy, Bumblebee, then that leaves one question: where the heck did they take them? Bulkhead furrowed his brow as he offered his own idea. If I had to guess, they're most likely inside the Khan's base, wherever that is. You mean you don't know? Vlad King exclaimed. Strongarm raised a hand to him to try and calm the situation. We've been trying to locate them for weeks now, I assure you. The cadet balled her fist, reminded of her own failure with her tracer. But we haven't had much luck, and just when we think we're close, we... everyone. Ajiro interrupted, pointing up toward the sky. I think we may wanna be on guard. The group collectively raised their heads just in time to see a dark, metal probe come flying down from the night sky, floating down and stopping just above Optimus' head level. Anyone else thinking what I'm thinking? Kyoka asked. Izuku furrowed his brow at the probe as the projector on its underside started to light up. Yeah, a message straight from the Decepticons. The young man's fears were confirmed the moment a hologram emerged from the dark purple lens, and the smirking visage of Starscream stood directly in the center of the massive group of people and Autobots. His sights locked onto Optimus Prime and he gave him a bow. Greetings, Optimus Prime. I hope I have caught you in a good mood, HMHM. Prime's glare hardened on the Seeker in contempt. I am far from a good mood, Starscream. Tell me where you have taken Bumblebee and Midnight and perhaps we will be lenient on you. Oh, Optimus, you were never good at threats, were you? Starscream rubbed his nails against his chest, his smug grin never leaving. But then again, I suppose that is more of a Decepticon's forte, now isn't it? Worry not, though, for your precious scout and the human woman are both alive. He raised his hands and 2 more holograms appeared next to him, which showed an unconscious Midnight and Bumblebee hanging from electronic shackles. Granted, they're out like lights, so... give them back. Everyone was taken aback when May suddenly snapped at Starscream, her lips curled into a snarl as she clenched her fists so hard, her knuckles turned white. That's our friend you have. And you're a bunch of cowards for taking him. Surprisingly enough, Tenya actually joined in on admonishing the Seeker. Indeed. And how dare you take our teacher as well? She had nothing to do with any of this. Starscream sneered down to the 2, rolling his optics. Yes, well, your scout should have thought that through before accepting her date offer. He moved his focus back to Prime with a snide remark. Honestly, I thought you would have taught your soldiers better, Optimus. To think that your own scout would put such an important secret at risk. Optimus shook his head, not letting Starscream's words get to him. Enough of this, Starscream. What is it that you want? Oh, nothing much. Starscream's grin increased significantly. Simply relinquish the Skyboom shield and the coordinates to your base and I'll let them go. Over our dead bodies, Starscream. Windblade snapped. You think we'll just give you the location of our base? Sideswipe scoffed. PSH, dream on, ya bolt head. A sigh escaped Starscream's throat and his hand went to his face, ashamed of their defiance. Oh, I had so hoped this would be easier. Perhaps this will serve to better incentivize you. He snapped his fingers and another set of holograms appeared, those of Thundercracker and Shadow Striker, and they were holding shock prods next to Bumblebee and Midnight. Now, I'll ask again. Give us the location of your base or else we will torture your scout into giving it up, and I cannot be responsible for what may happen to the woman if you continue to resist. Instantly, RC had shot up to her feet, her features contorted in rage the moment she saw her personal nemesis. Shadow Striker. Her scream took everyone off guard, and brought the assassin's attention straight to her. I swear, if any of you do anything to hurt Bumblebee or Midnight, I will. Yes, Cherie, you made your intentions very clear to me. Shadow Striker assured with a wave. And considering how upset you were, I would not put it past you to actually, what was it, you said? Ah, yes, put my head on a pike. That made almost everyone's jaws drop, Autobot and human alike. RC, the nicest femme they had ever met, one with a friendly disposition and even friendlier paint job, had threatened her with that. RC. Ochako spoke up, though her voice was shaking. Did you really say that to her? The intel officer's face softened significantly, seeing how worried her friends were. Guys, I can explain. Oh, but having no context makes it so much more fun. Starscream complained. Children, la femme you see before you has a much darker side to her than she typically lets on. Shadow Striker chortled, earning her RC's glare again. And it was I who unlocked that side of her Zosans of stellar cycles ago. She eyed RC curiously. Do not tell me you haven't told them about Tailgate yet. Optimus, Bulkhead and many other bots all awkwardly glanced away at that, some even saddened at the mention of the bot's name. Who's Tailgate? Kyoka finally asked. RC balled her hands into fists. It was painful to relive many of these memories, especially when she had thought she'd moved past them long ago. It had gotten easier to deal with over the eons, but still, occasionally her mind would go back to that moment, when she screamed his name in desperation before seeing the light fade from his optics. Tailgate. RC screwed her eyes shut, took a deep breath, and explained. Tailgate was a young bot. One who had emerged in the midst of the war for Cybertron. She hugged her arms while everyone listened intently. He was barely a stellar cycle old when he was assigned to the intelligence division, with me and Bumblebee acting as his mentors. He was small, so he was a good scout. Her eyes opened, revealing her optics to have changed to yellow yet again as she glared at her nemesis. But then everything went wrong. We were ambushed, and I think you can tell by who. Hey, yes, I remember that day rather well. Shadow Striker cackled. It was relatively easy, really. The heroes and students present couldn't help but be disgusted by Shadow Striker's proud tone, bragging about taking a life. How could you? All Might bellowed, his expression far from happy. You killed a yearling in cold blood. How in the hell can you even look at yourself in the mirror? I am a Decepticon, good sir. Shadow dismissed. It is my job to eliminate Autobots, especially when they do not give us the information we require. She shrugged and faced away from the crowd, pointing her prod at Bumblebee. No information, no chance at living. It was only thanks to Z's once timely arrival that RC even got to live. But even then, seeing her protege die before her very optics, she peered over her shoulder back to RC. It was enough to send her into quite the frenzy. Took out all of my Viacons in one swoop, and there were a lot. Once again, the students stared at RC in disbelief, only for her to nod and confirm her words. It's true. It's not something I like to admit, but something broke in me after that. The little bot that I was responsible for, died before he could really get the chance to live. I've never forgiven myself for that. Her optics narrowed at Shadow without remorse. And I'll never forgive you for doing it. Shadow Striker was about to respond, but Starscream intervened. Yes, quite the tragic backstory. But if you recall, this isn't story time with RC, this is an ultimatum. He refocused himself back on Optimus, puffing his chest confidently with his hands behind his back. So once again, I offer you a choice, Prime, the Skyboom shield and your base's coordinates, and I will let your scout and the woman go. I will give you 2 hours to decide, and nothing more. He raised a hand and a set of Cybertronian characters appeared on it. Simply contact us on this frequency when you're ready. Starscream, out. With that, the holograms disappeared and the probe started to fly off, only for Sideswipe to shoot it down with his shoulder missile. PSH, jerks. He sneered. More than jerks, they're downright despicable. Snipe noted. More evil than any villain I've had to face down. Present Mike grit his teeth and pointed his fingers up. These cons are straight up whack. Bad vibes from top to bottom, no question asked. These Decepticons have made it clear that they show absolutely no remorse for what they have to do to get what they want. Ectoplasm said with a raised fist. These appalling threats shouldn't go unpunished. Agreed. 13 nodded. But what do we even do? It's not like we can just find out where their base is and storm it to try and get our friends back. It was then that they heard someone clear their throat, and everyone brought their attention straight to Momo. Yes, hi, about that. She pulled out the locator she had created not too long ago and showed it all to them. I actually managed to create a tracer that I stuck to Shadow Striker's leg before she left. I checked her hologram during the comm and it is actually still on there, so, I've got their location right here. The news surprised the crowd of heroes and Autobots as Optimus, Fowler and All Might went over to see what she had. Prime crouched down and zoomed his optics in on the screen, seeing that she spoke the truth. "Ha, excellent work, Momo." He smiled beneath his faceplate. "You have just saved us quite the amount of guesswork." The creation quirk user smiled back as Optimus analyzed the map. It says the Decepticons should be in the far northern part of Earth's western hemisphere. MHA. They're in Canada. All Might guffawed. "Our friendly neighbors to the north." Fowler muttered. "How ironic." Sideswipe grinned and rubbed his hands together eagerly. "Alright, so we know what we've gotta do, now. Get to this Canada place, bust Bumblebee and Midnight out of the Khan's ship, and wreck the place while we do it." Optimus stood up and somewhat agreed with Sideswipe's assessment. "We'll require a bit more planning than that, but I'd say that's a fair summation of what's to happen." He looked out to the rest of his Autobots and raised a fist. "Autobots, we have a destination and we have our rescue mission. So let's do what we have to in order to rescue our friend." Whoa, hold on there, big guy." Snipe piped up, stepping forward once again. "I hope we're not thinking of going without some of us, now. Those cons just kidnapped our friend, too, after all." "Exactly." Cementos concurred, causing several more teachers to step up to the plate as well. "It's not just one of your own that's been captured, but one of ours as well. I believe it would be only fair to accompany you on this mission to rescue her." Prime was taken aback by all of the volunteers that had just offered their help, though he couldn't fault their strong argument. "They've got a point, Prime," Jazz said with a shrug of his own. "If anything, we got these cats all involved at a pretty opportune time. The cons might be ready for us, but every time we bring heroes into the mix, they come up short. They do like to underestimate the humans, I'll say that much." Windblade smirked, eyeing the heroes with a smirk. "I'd say that this time would be no exception." You are correct." "Very well then." Prime nodded down to the heroes in approval. "Heroes of UA, you may accompany us on this mission. However, I recommend you only send 10, so we can pair yourselves up with each of us to ensure your safety." Nezu returned the nod in approval. "That sounds very amicable, Optimus Prime. Thank you." He raised his hands up to the teachers and announced, "You heard the Autobot. Will 10 of you please?" Wait, Principal Nezu." Things once again came to a halt when Izuku spoke, the Greenette stepping right to the principal before bowing to him. If it's not too much trouble, my friends and I would like to come as well." There was no hesitation when Aizawa said, "Absolutely not." The students flinched at their teacher's words, his hair standing up on end as his quirk activated. His red, bloodshot eyes glared at them through his bandages to get his point across. "It's bad enough that some of you kids went on an unsanctioned mission yesterday, but you went without any provisional licenses." Springer rolled his optics and flung his head back. Scrap this again. I thought we've been over this." The discussion didn't end. Aizawa emphasized, "You kids aren't going, end of discussion." "But Fowler gave us the okay yesterday." Mina protested. "And he's a government official. And I'm the one who's actually responsible for you kids' safety." Aizawa pressed further, glancing to Fowler briefly. "And the fact that Agent Fowler didn't even consult me on the matter is even more questionable." He went back to his students with a hard glare. "Nevertheless, it's still completely out of the question." Eijiro raised his fists and grit his teeth in frustration. "Yeah, but we actually came back from that fight. Doesn't that count for something?" Aizawa sighed and brought his good hand up, pinching the bridge of his nose. "I can't believe this conversation is still going." He blinked and his quirk deactivated, though he still had the students' attention. "Listen, whether or not you're good on the battlefield isn't the main focus of this debate. It's that you were using your quirks in a way that violates every rule set up by the law. And in wanting to come on this mission, you would be continuing to do so." While the teens winced at his words, RC couldn't help but be curious. "Mr. Aizawa, what do you mean by that?" "I think I can explain." Strongarm spoke up, raising her hand to bring up her holographic display. "I've been studying Earth law over the past couple of weeks since we've got here, and I've come to learn that there's quite a lot of prohibition on public quirk usage in several countries, mainly amongst civilians and heroes in training without licenses." Nezu nodded up to her. That is correct, and there's a reason for it. Quirks can be powerful, yes, but that does not necessarily make a person a ready-made hero. If civilians were to engage villains with their own quirks without the proper training, it could have disastrous results. Plus, anyone whose quirk could be destructive enough to cause collateral damage would also be an issue. Snipe added. There's a lot of intricacies to this law, ya see. Optimus put a hand to his chin, going over it in his head. I do see. However, I also believe that you are severely underestimating your students. He gestured down to the kids, all of them wearing sheepish yet hopeful faces. We have trained them for the past 2 weeks, and it is evident that it has paid off. They have taken on Viacons several times over and continue to help us in other matters as well, such as our search for the relics, and the Scraplet invasion. The heck's a Scraplet? Present Mike said as quietly as possible, only for him to get shushed. Aizawa sighed and directed his sights up to the Prime. Optimus, I get it, you're proud of the kids for making it this far. And I won't lie, a part of me is impressed, too. The students were taken aback slightly as Aizawa went on. But this rescue mission is the real deal. If any of the students were to get seriously hurt out there, then I will bear full responsibility for whatever may happen. Optimus urged, shooting a glance toward Springer. Someone promised me that the other day when we went on that mission, and now, I extend the same commitment to you. The homeroom teacher narrowed his eyes curiously to Optimus, only for All Might to step in as well. I will also take responsibility for the children on this mission. I'm one of the ones who've been in on this secret for the longest, so it's only right that I carry that burden. With a furrow of his brow and a determined smile, he pleaded with his colleague, please, Aizawa, give them a chance to help rescue their friend. Shifting his eyes back and forth between All Might, Optimus and the students, Aizawa knew he had a lot of weight riding on his choice. The fact that the former two were so stalwart in their standing was one thing, but as they spoke, the students became more resolute as well. Before long, all 9 of them were standing tall and ready to accept anything that came their way on this mission. He could see it in their eyes, they weren't going to back down. With yet another sigh, Aizawa narrowed his eyes toward the students. Alright, here's how things are going to play out. The pointed over to Mei first. Hatsume, you work best with Red Alert, right? Why yeah, Mei stammered. I do. Then you'll be running communications between all of the other heroes out in the field with me and him back at base. Aizawa ordered. Plus, I heard you had something called a Sky Spy that you were working on. Maybe it's time you give it a test run. Mei brightened up immediately at that and saluted to the man. Sir, yes sir. Good. Aizawa went back to his own students, giving them a stern glare. Now listen very closely. I want you and your guardian bots to pair up with the teachers, 1 bot, 1 student, 1 human. The other teachers were stunned to hear this while the students were equally as surprised, though they also brightened up as Aizawa made his instructions clear to them. Do not stray from your group while on this operation, is that clear? Otherwise you can kiss this chance to prove yourselves goodbye. The 81A students all shared a look, their smiles unyielding as Tenya answered for all of them, Sir, we understand very clearly. We'll follow yours and Prime's orders to the letter. That's what I was hoping to hear. Aizawa's arm snapped back as he pointed to the school. Now get to the classroom and grab your costumes. We're getting this done tonight. Optimus watched on as the students all cheered victoriously and made a break for the school, all while he smiled with pride beneath his faceplate. He bowed his head toward Aizawa appreciatively. Thank you, Aizawa. This means a lot to them, I'm sure. HMPH, took him long enough. Fowler chuckled as Aizawa merely huffed back to him. Trust me, after this mission, you'll see the same potential in these kids that I do. Vlad King crossed his arms, raising his brow toward his dark-haired colleague. I certainly hope so, otherwise you just made a very questionable decision, Aizawa. We'll see, Vlad. Aizawa replied. It was then that Optimus Prime addressed the Autobots and heroes one final time, his voice unwavering as he spoke with the utmost gravity. We have our mission, and soon we will have our teams. Be warned, though, the Decepticons' defenses will be great, so we must tread carefully. However, if we all work together, I have faith that we will overcome this challenge and rescue Bumblebee and Midnight. He pointed off into the distance and declared, Autobots, heroes, let's roll to the rescue. And it's the end of Season 2 Part 10 of this What If. I hope you guys like it. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment down below and subscribe to the channel.